All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to episode 70 of In Class with. Yeah, we made it. We made it. Well, actually, a little bit because we got like 3 or 4 episodes we ain't put numbers on. So
that's because you just like slide up into the moment and say, you know what? Let me push record and then drop the jewels. You are a jewel dropper, Professor Hunter. Just saying. You litter the place with jewels.
Let me just say thank you and good morning, sir. Good morning to you. Good morning. You look like you got some sun. You was out in them streets.
Yeah, I sat outside. Actually, I walked outside. I'll tell you that story in a minute. I was outside yesterday for a couple of hours. So I'll tell you about that in a minute. How are you?
I'm good. I spent a couple of hours myself with playing around with this social media platform.
But you always bronzed up, so I know you get outside. So
yeah, no, I got you. Got to get the sun, the S and the SUN. That's how we stay on this side as long as possible.
Everybody loves the sunshine. Yes.
All right. So, what are we talking about today? I said I'm on your time complete. Oh, well, did I say good morning to everybody from East Coast and the other countries and
good morning to the globe,
Bermuda and every place in between? Good morning.
Good morning to the globe, especially our kindred in Haiti. I thought what you said, and I caught the conversation. I caught the piece of it you put on YouTube that you had on Sirius earlier in the week, before we had a bit of a conversation that you shared with the universe. And I thought it was very powerful, the conversation you had with a sister who's writing for the Haitian Times and the brothers about what's going on. And of course, I picked up the paper this morning. Of course, obviously you read it online, but I like the physical paper as we talked about. And looks like everything is going according to plan. Here's the headline: Haiti asks United States to send troops as crisis brews. Check. Anybody surprised it's not paying attention to the history of Haiti? And y'all go into narrative and you all look at our extensive conversation. We spent several hours on Haiti and have revisited it. But we know that the current prime minister and the one who Moise was going to appoint 2 days before he was assassinated are battling. But we know that both of those cats have been thoroughly vetted by the United States. The Organization of American States sent us a little special crew in, and then that's when they said we endorse him. Then, of course, the Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, immediately endorsed the current guy, which means he's been vetted. This is the game plan. Chaos, will you please come in now? Okay, get the airport, get the fuel, secure us. And there are 11, at least the number that's being used consistently is 11 elected parliamentary officials in the country that we know as Haiti. That's very, very deliberate. It's by design. And we don't need to spend much time on it this morning, but when we say good morning, we're in solidarity. Y'all can't see I got my Haitian flag out, my full-size Haitian flag.
Oh, you got the full joint.
Oh, yeah. Because you know what? And my people, Philadelphia Freedom Schools, our 21st year, we started in full with the young people this week. High school students were actually reading. Those you might be interested. This is John Rickford's book, We Are an African People, Independent Education, Black Power, and the Radical Imagination. We always pick a very dense and thick academic book for these young people in Philadelphia to dive into, and then we tear it apart page by page, line by line. So, but one summer, about 10 years ago, I don't know if I have, no, I don't see it, but our friend Randall Robinson, who we know very well, who 21 years ago, actually wrote a book that serves as a bridge between the long struggle for reparations in the United States in particular and the current conversation, a book called The Debt. That was the first book that we did for Philadelphia Freedom Schools, what we call Freedom Summer, in the echo of Freedom Schools in the past. And then Brother Robinson came and spent time with those young people, a couple hundred of them, of African descent, including Afro-Latinos, as we might say, Puerto Ricans, Dominicans, students who were Cambodian, Laotian, Chinese, but mostly Africans born and raised in the United States who came out of enslavement here in the United States. And that mingle, he was so impressed that in his next book, and this is actually interesting because all of this, when we hear these Africana States conceptual categories, they are not something that I just say, okay, oh, boom, boom, boom. This is years of listening and thinking and understanding and seeing the tensions and trying to ask, how can we ask better questions? In the first book, The Debt, is called What America Owes to Blacks. That's a social structure conversation. It's what you owe us. So the next book, where he writes about his encounter with those student readers and scholars of Philadelphia Freedom Schools who come from all over the city of Philadelphia, not a GPA requirement, not top test scores. No, you black, you brown, you yellow. You want to come in? You got some white food? Y'all want to come in? Okay, come. But he said he was so blown away with their devotion to scholarship that in his next book, he wrote about them and about how this is what education has looked like for us and what it should look like. The name of that book was The Reckoning, What Blacks Owe Each Other. You hear us say,
let's pause for a second.
Yeah.
Speaking of exceptional, and since we're here on Saturday and we haven't talked about Zyla Avant-Garde.
Shout out.
Let's just take a moment because she is the potential that all of our children have. She's magical, but there's nothing special.
Nothing at all. She's representative.
Yes. Everybody that's raising a child, let them do all of the things. I think we've had a conversation where I said, we've been, indoctrinated into this jack of all trades, master of none. And I'm like, we can do all things and do them well. And she articulated that. She said, everything I do well.
Everything. She got Guinness Book World Records. Who's this child?
Everything I do well. She's 14.
14.
She understands who she comes from, where she comes from, who she is.
Now, I haven't had a chance. She of course made the front page of the Times, and she's a child. So, we in this society are blinded immediately by celebrity. So we know we have to make sure that she isn't, quote unquote, overexposed. And I haven't got a chance to read through the thing. I'm trying to see. I see that last name and I see she's from New Orleans. I immediately think Haiti. Do you know, is she Haiti?
She must be, but no one's talking about it, right? Avant-garde.
And I don't want to pry too much because, again, this is a child.
That's her business, right? But yeah, she's from just outside of New Orleans.
Harvey, Louisiana, just finished 8th grade, showed us prowess for spelling at 10 when her father, who had been watching the National B, asked her how to spell the winning word. And she spelled it perfectly. On the humble, watching it with her pops on the couch. One of my elders, the great Mariba Kelsey, always says this. This comes actually from the period. The reason we're reading this book in Freedom Schools is because it's about the African-centered schools of the 1960s, 70s, 80s, many of which survive to this day. Shout out to the Center for Positive Education, people in Chicago, people in Detroit, Aisha Shule, Du Bois Academy. I could go on, Nation House here in DC. But anyway, one of the things they often said in these schools is Black children are geniuses. I mean, that's just like on the walls, on the posters, this kind of thing. So she's sitting on it doesn't say where the family came from, but that name, Avant-Garde, that's a French name. And Haiti, one of my former students, now on the faculty of the University of Chicago, one of the most brilliant human beings I've ever encountered, good sister, out of Louisiana, out of New Orleans, Rashawna Johnson, wrote a book about, in fact, it was her dissertation, which she started thinking through when she was an undergrad at Howard. That's going to tie, by the way, to Lovecraft country, but we'll get there in a second. She studied with folks like Walter Johnson and many others who talk about the fact that New Orleans, of course, had and has as much or more in common with the Caribbean, as it does with most of the United States. And so New Orleans was the port. In fact, what was it called? Soul by Soul, I think, was Walter Johnson's book, where he talks about that port and that flesh market in New Orleans, which became for a time the largest market for the trade of enslaved Africans in North America. And of course, those Africans came out of Haiti. So I'm looking at this child's name and I'm saying the ancestors, man, they like to just give us little reminders. And of course, finally, just one more thing on her. She is representative, Professor Hunter, because we had all kind of academic and intellectual competitions in the segregated schools. So her greatest competition 50 years ago, 100 years ago, would have been another Black girl or Black boy hitting them bricks on those spellers that we get in the American narrative as, they were in these segregated schools and they were run down. They got secondhand books. True. And what's your point? Because those are the schools that produced the people that killed Jim Crow. So what was not inferior about them was the human beings. But anyway, come on back, because I want you got to help us walk through this. Go, please.
No. I mean, I wanted to sit, in the spirit of avant-garde for a minute. I feel like
even the name avant-garde.
Are
the ancestors sending this from Central Script? Yeah. I mean, are they just writing this?
Yes. And it's time, to stop with the reflection of the judging of ourselves through somebody else's lens. This young lady is no mistake in her mind that and she, oh yeah, I just started a couple of years ago.
Right.
She's a little shake. She said some have been doing this since they were 5.
Ooh.
10 hours a day.
Ooh.
I'd start a couple of years, and it's not my favorite thing. It's not my priority,
I do it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And I'm going to play basketball at Harvard. I'm going to coach. I'm going to become a scientist. I'm probably going to find the cure, something, win a Nobel Prize. I'm going to do all of these things. And I said, this is what I'm saying. When we put the limits that people have placed on us, on ourselves, when we shackle ourselves, it's like that elephant in the circus that they put a little, a big chain around them when they're babies, right? And then by the time they're several tons, all they need is a string to keep them. We've had this string around our spirits and around our psyches and our brains for so long. It's time. It's time.
Well, fairly recently, then we started tying it to ourselves.
Yes.
Yeah, because spelling is not, everybody's born with whatever we have, our equipment. But then the work is the socialization, is the study, is the community. And for us, as we talk about this Africana States framework, the governance structure. So what you're seeing is someone who has been encouraged, who's been nurtured, who's been supported, who's been instructed. So she didn't drop out of the sky doing that. I mean, she says, okay, some of these people study 10 hours a day. They started when they were 5 years old. Well, she did too, except she's not just studying spelling words. She's around people for whom excellence is the standard. And any of you all who think about that, and we call it different things. In the South, we used to call it home training. There's a certain way you enter and exit a room. There's a certain way you speak, which is why, you can tell for me, and I know this is completely unfair, but I'll keep it to me just individually. I think that if I were sitting around in the house with my mouth open, I would have been told to close it. Like if I was just sitting somewhere like this, boy, close your mouth, with the vacant gaze and you breathing out your mouth, son? Huh? What? Oh, I'm sorry. So fairly or unfairly, when I see people I'm like, who you been around? Who raised you? And that's not fair. You understand? But what I'm saying is it's socialization. She isn't, because what will happen often in this society, and I'm thinking now about Dee, the little girl in Lovecraft country, right? Who, by the way, is an invention of Misha Green and crew, because Matt Bruff is a little boy in the book, in the novel. But at any rate, she's magic. She's also fictional, like Wakanda and all these other unreal places that Black folk want to kind of create. We're going to talk about that too, in terms of escapism as avoidance. But we have a real life Dee. And guess what? As you say, she's not an outlier. That's what it looks like when you surround in a community. But what we almost always have to guard against very consciously in the social structure is that individuals like this will be pulled out and made into magical Negroes.
That's why I wanted to say she's not special. Not that she's not special. She is special. She's not unique.
She's absolutely special.
Absolutely special. She's not unique.
She's not unique.
About your Freedom School kids who come from all walks of life, you're not cherry picking.
Nope.
One summer, you're able to transform them and turn them into scholars.
Well, move them in that direction.
Right. But it has to be in them.
It has to be
able to do that. For Randall Robertson to be impressed with kids that you didn't cherry pick.
No question.
It's already in them. So I'm just like, it's important for us to be mindful. Those of you who are raising children, the children that are in here, push yourself to the limits because you're limitless, and, use avant-garde as a measure or as a representation. But there's so many avant-gardes out there, literally.
Right. And use her as inspiration and find those places. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, I could talk about Freedom Schools a long time. In fact, we go on the narrative side, maybe we'll pull some of our Freedom School lump. We got 21 years of them. And some of them, the girl I call it, she's my child, Shanice Thompson, who's professor at Bowie State University, has a PhD from Ohio State, a master's degree from Boston University, came down to Howard. I had her since she was 16 years old. She showed up at Freedom Schools. We started reading these books. She's okay, this is cool. And she was a basketball player too, from right across the street in North Philly, the charter school. She walked across to the school district headquarters with the rest of the students, and we'd be right in there. But I mean, there are stories like that over, and I can think about all these students like that right now. The students in leadership who are doing it now, Ashray Hines and Nadira Sulaiman, they are teachers. They're both, past undergrad, graduate school, going back, and now so I get to just come in and watch. And then, we talk about the book, but they've written the curriculum. They've done all that work. And that's what it looks like. We have an expectation, and then we provide students with the tools. For years, we used to we'd have a book, and then we would buy dictionaries. Okay, here. You have eyes, you got fingers. Let's go. And so removing the idea that you can't do it and getting out of their way, because if it were video games or basketball or a dance move or something for TikTok, you wouldn't even think about it. You get out of their way. It's a book. Oh, no, see, that's the social structure invading. And guess what? This ain't new, because what the first thing we're going to do, and this is why the symbol of our Freedom School is Jehudi, the writer. There's Jehudi right there. And we don't get into light skin versus dark skin. Why? You see, no faces. Afro puffs, and he got the shortcut. She's writing with the feather of my eye, and he's reading. Oh, by the way, this came from a sister, Monique, who at time was Brother Cedric in Brazil, his partner. She designed this. Okay. So, I mean, this is all, in fact, Cedric ran Freedom Schools in Philadelphia.
Shout out to Cedric Miles, who was participating in the hub and doing a lot of Brazilian work. And we're collecting there too. I mean, this is the gathering. This is how we get free. This is how we become, all of the things that we were supposed to be, is by gathering and collecting the excellence among us and then putting it back out.
That's exactly right. So, I mean, let's use our sister.
Okay.
Let's use our young sister just for a second to bring another person into the conversation. And I was reminded of this morning by another very good sister, young sister, who is on faculty at Howard University. I'm sure everybody heard the news that my friends Ta-Nehisi Coates and Nicole Hannah-Jones are joining the faculty of Howard University. And it's a wonderful thing to have them there. And I think it's also an opportunity, as part of that wonderful thing, for folks to, again, not look at individuals, any of us, those two, Professor Hunter and myself, as somehow outliers, but as representatives of the vast majority of folk who the social structure likes to curate in an attempt to kind of narrate how we should look at our institutions. And so I mentioned that as a background because another member of the faculty, in fact, one of the newest members of the faculty, two of the newest members in the history department, one, my former student, Natalie Pierre, who finished her PhD at NYU, who was an undergrad at Howard. She is from Haiti, born in Brooklyn, but her people are Haitian, raised in Haiti. She was in Haiti during the earthquake, 2010. We worried about her till we got word that she was okay. And she'll be joining the faculty in the history department at Howard this fall. Right alongside her is another sister who came out of Howard named Ashley Robertson. Now, Ashley Robertson is an interesting sister. She, her husband, their young son, Carter, they named her for Carter G. Woodson. She's hardcore in the genealogy, trained by some of the best, advised and raised by people like Ida Jones, the great Elizabeth Clark Lewis, who is at Howard University, my friend and colleague, a real Jegna. And Ashley reminded us all this morning that today is the birthday of an institution builder who produced young women like Miss Avant-Garde in terms of their undergraduate experience. And of course, that is the great Mary McLeod Bethune. Today is Ms. Bethune's birthday. And of course, Ashley knows about that. And I resisted the urge to go pull a bunch of Bethune books. I only pulled two. And I pulled these two for two reasons. One, because they are excellent points of entry for young people or anyone of any age to really get a firm grasp on who Mary McLeod Bethune, coming out of South Carolina, is, what she did, how the institutions that she built and influenced, whether it be the Negro Division of the National Youth Recovery Act, whether her work with Eleanor Roosevelt and Franklin Roosevelt. She advised five presidents of the United States in the social structure context, but in the governance structure context, she herself, coming out of South Carolina, her first teaching job was a place called Haynes Institute. That is the great Lucy Craft Laney. I mentioned Lucy Laney, and I think about some of the other people, Modesta Simpkins and some of the other folks, because they're South Carolinians, these Negroes. And I think about my friend Kathy Adams, a master teacher down in South Carolina at Claflin University. And Miss Bethune saw how to construct an institution of higher education from Lucy Craft Laney. And she took those lessons to Florida. And so one of the two books I'm going to mention on Miss McLeod Bethune's birthday is Mary McLeod Bethune in Florida. This is Ashley's book, forward by Gwen Boyd, who was at one time the president of Delta Sigma Theta. And of course, Miss Bethune, Delta, there she goes, Mary McLeod Bethune. In fact, the sister who was with her the day she made transition, her personal secretary, sound like when y'all have Miss Bethune like walking and y'all, because there's very little video footage of her that survives. So you see the pictures and they say, you know, you'll act like she was walking stooped over or bent. She said she worked to the last day of her life. And then she told me when I was leaving, I'll see you in the morning. But I think she knew something because she told me go out there and get the will and bring it out the safe. And she was thinking about re-signing it, signing the will. She never got around to signing her will. But we want to talk about her last will and testament in a minute, because again, it's her birthday and we should take our moment to do this. But she said, Miss Bethune strutted. Miss Bethune, she had a strut. And it's very interesting when you start talking about that. But Ashley does an incredible job of talking about how Miss Bethune built that institution and imposed on the United States of America and on the world a compelling vision of who Black people are. And so I encourage you all to get this book, and I like it for those two reasons. Number one, it's very accessible. This is by something called the History Press. It's a press that does a lot of books on Black folk in an accessible style. It's written by first-rate scholars who are very used to being in conversation with communities. That's what we're doing here. And again, I'll hesitate to urge, I got a stack of these History Press books over there. They got one on Dorothy Porter Wesley, my friend Janet Sims Wood, who was for years at the Moreland Spingarn Research Center at Howard University. But this is the second one. And this covers the years from 1936, I think, to 1948, if I'm not mistaken, when Mary McLeod Bethune, let me double check the dates here, 48, 49, when Miss Bethune lived in Washington, D.C. Remember, she came up to help with the New Deal program. This is by my friend Ida Jones, the great Ida Jones. Ida E. Jones, with a foreword by the Jegna Elizabeth Clark Lewis. These are Black women at Black institutions doing this work in the top level about a Black woman institution builder who built a university with $1.50 on what was a garbage dump at the time and would not be denied. Mary McLeod Bethune. So again, the idea of the exceptional Negro is destroyed when you look at in the context of our governance structures. What have we produced? Who are we to each other? What are our standards? And I mentioned, let me just mention a couple of other things. I marked a couple of pages, wanted to mention. I just love, I mean, there's one picture of Mary McLeod Bethune sitting in front of her choirs. The girls are singing, the young women are singing. And I will show you this. I like this one because this is her with the little girls. But look at this one right here. Here's Mary Bethune. Chocolate Mary Bethune sitting there. This picture right here is from 1910 when she's the principal of the institute that would eventually bear her name. Here's another picture. I want to put her in context. We talk about the governance structure. Who are Black folk to each other? Here she is with some women that everybody should know. I'm gonna freeze here. Y'all can pause on YouTube. If you go back to narrative, you know, Reyes and them are gonna have all this footnoted, and then we go back. Oh, by the way, we're working because, as you say, Professor Hunter, we have over 70 numbered conversations, not counting the other ones. And this is just the first draft. This ain't even really the draft, right? Because now the stuff has been being uploaded on narrative. It's being annotated by a brilliant team. And the next stage is, remember, September is the launch. So y'all spread the word about narrative. We're turning these into books. See, well, that's a whole nother conversation. So we're going, but anyway, this picture right here, you know why I love this picture? I'm just going to show y'all. Like, this is here, Margaret Murray Washington. That's Booker T. Washington's wife. I'm just mentioning Booker T because you know the name, but you may not know Margaret Murray. Here's Miss Bethune. Next to her is her Jegna, the great Lucy Craft Laney. Wow. Up here on the top, left to right. Whoa. These two here, that's Charlotte Hawkins Brown. Where my finger is, y'all go look up Charlotte Hawkins Brown. Look up the Palmer Institute. She built a school. And then next to her, my finger right here, that's Eugenia Burns Hope. She's the wife of John Hope, who was the president of Morehouse in Atlanta University. Eugenia Virginia Burns Hope. Those of you in Atlanta know when you go on the campus of what they call the AUC, the Atlanta University Center, and you walk over and you're going from Clark, Atlanta to up the hill to where Morehouse is, and you pass that bust of Du Bois, will be on your right, and then you're going up the hill, you pause at the grave of John Hope, the great president who brought Du Bois into the Atlanta University Center. Then you keep walking a little bit, you look over, you see the chapel. That's the chapel right there, you know, where Benjamin Mays and them, they use as Martin Luther King and them. Then you walk up a little bit, you look to the left, that's that bell that Larry Fishburne rang in School Days. Wake up! Right there. And then you look up and you see this white stone monument with a statue standing in the middle of a guy in academic regalia. That's Buck Benny, the great Benjamin Elijah Mays, standing there. And in front of Mays' statue is a little crypt with two graves, Benjamin and Sadie Mays, buried right there. And then beyond them is the dorm. And in that dormitory, the roof is there. And that's where, after she was cremated, the ashes of Virginia Burns Hope were spread there. And so that's not unusual. Some universities, as we talked about in one of our sessions before, the founders or major educators are buried on campus. That's not unusual. Black folk do that. In fact, Ms. Bethune is buried at Bethune-Cookman. And they just got a lot of Hugh Gloster is at Morehouse. Howard Thurman. Y'all go over to the narrative and look at this Howard Thurman. In fact, let me use that to pivot, and then we'll move into what we say we're going to talk about today. But it's Miss Bethune's birthday, so we had to do this. Mary Bethune, if you've watched on Narrative our extensive conversation on the great Howard Washington Thurman, then you know the impact of Howard Thurman on Ms. Bethune's life. I'll leave aside, because this isn't really about Mary McLeod Bethune Day, but her long, deep friendship with Carter G. Woodson. When Woodson passed in 1950, Miss Bethune published her remarks on Woodson. They're in the Journal of Negro History Bulletin. Yeah, I'm pointing because I'm looking at the shelf with the Negro History Bulletins on it. When she says, "I will always love Carter Woodson because he taught me to believe in myself." She was being overly gracious. She came out of South Carolina believing in herself. But Howard Thurman talks about in his autobiography, With Head and Heart, he talks about how, as a little boy, his mother would take him over to hear Miss Bethune talk, usually on fifth Sundays, and how she just transformed him, and how she would raise money, and the black community was there, white folk would come, and she said, "Okay, we're going to take up this collection." And then the little children were brought up. If they couldn't walk, they were brought up, and they could drop whatever they wanted to drop in the collection plate. If they had a penny, a nickel, or something that wasn't money, you drop it in. And he said every one of those children who came up, Miss Bethune would touch them on the head and say something to him. He said, "I don't remember what she would say to me, but I know it transformed my life." And the reason I'm bringing that up in this context of her birthday today is because if I can put my hands, and I can, on it, there are 5 volumes of the Howard Washington Thurman papers. This is volume 4. The great Walter Earl Fluker, whose son is over the archives now at the Atlanta University Center, good brother, was director of this project. This is the only place in print that this appears, what I'm about to show you all. On the 23rd of May, 1955, Miss Bethune's funeral was held on the campus of Bethune-Cookman, Daytona Beach, Florida. Who gave the eulogy? Who had to rearrange his schedule, canceling a talk he was supposed to give at Bowdoin College. Bowdoin is a good school in Maine. In fact, Benny went there, but Benjamin Elijah Mays, story for another day. My friend Eddie Glaude came out of Moss Point, Mississippi. I know Eddie Glaude. Eddie went to Bowdoin. But this brother canceled that commitment because he had to come. He didn't fly. He traveled by train everywhere. He had to take the train to Florida. And this was, of course, a native son of Daytona Beach, Howard Thurman. And he gave the eulogy for Mary McLeod Bethune. He never published it. There's only a recording of it, and they transcribed the recording in this volume. And he tells that story. He tells the story about, her running the hands over the heads. And he said this. He said, "I have 2 simple things to say as I've reflected upon the meaning of the life of Mother Bethune," who we call the second mother, by the way. And the first is this: she was able, under the widest possible variety of circumstances, to turn all frustrations and all handicaps into shafts of burning light. I'm going to resist the urge to go any further in that. Because Mary Bethune, when she passed, her secretary said there were 3 things she asked me about just the week she passed. And then that last day I saw her, she maybe go in there and get the will out to say. So I know she must have been thinking about it, but she didn't say she didn't feel bad. She felt like she had a little indigestion. She passed of a heart attack. She said she had 2 secretaries Now, mind you, there was a beach in Florida named for Mary Bethune. That's where she used to have. She had a secretary over there at the beach named for her. Y'all gotta read the life of Mary Bethune for real. It's just a teaser. In fact, Professor Hunter, we got to do Mary Bethune. Maybe we get Ashley and Odd and them and gather up, and gang up on narrative and do it right. But she said, I want you. I don't need 2 secretaries. Can you handle my business stuff? Yeah, because you do my personal stuff. Yeah. Okay, then yeah. And so that was it. And then the other thing she said, how's the biography going? She didn't write an autobiography, but there's several biographies of her. And one was like an as told to biography she was working on. Hope was the lady's name that she was working with. Now, just after she made transition, let me see, was it Ida or was it Ashley that published The Last Will and Testament? Ebony magazine, and they've ran it several times, including the 1970s, the last time they ran it. She published her, what they call her Last Will and Testament. She passed in May 55. And they published it later that year, August 1955. And Miss Bethune, if you get a chance, it's all over the internet. I'll again resist the urge to read it. Read what Mary McLeod Bethune gave to the world as her last will and testament. In fact, let me just do one couple of lines. I can't read a lot of it. Because she said, I leave you love, I leave you hope, I leave you the challenge of developing confidence in one another, I leave you a thirst for education, I leave you a respect for the uses of power, I leave you faith, I leave you racial dignity, I leave you a desire to live harmoniously with your fellow men, I leave you finally a responsibility to our young people. But when she talks about having self-confidence, she says, I don't want to mess up. See,
read it. Go ahead, read it.
Yeah. I gotta find it. Oh my goodness, because Mary McLeod Bethune, man. Hold on for a second. Let me see if I can find it quickly. Because here we go. This is what I leave you racial dignity. She says this. I've never been sensitive about my complexion. My color has never destroyed my self-respect, nor has it ever caused me to conduct myself in such a manner as to merit the disrespect of any person. I have not let my color handicap me. Despite the many crushing burdens and handicaps, I have risen from the cotton fields of South Carolina to found a college, administer it during its years of growth, become a public servant in the government of our country, and the leader of women. I would not exchange my color for all the wealth in the world, for had I been born white, I might not have been able to do all that I've done or yet hope to do. Sit with that for a minute. All you people who think gonna play colorism, gonna think that, okay, I'm black, but I need to talk a certain way and act a certain way. Miss Bethune said, shit, I'm black. And I'm one of them girls who y'all try to run off, But you know what? I'm glad. Because had I been born white or close enough in color to it to a spot, I wouldn't have been able to do what I mean. Mary McLeod Bethune got a lifetime of statements like this, but this whole idea, when she says, and here, I'll just do the love, because love is so beautiful, right? She says, I leave you love. Love builds. It is positive and helpful. It is more beneficial than hate. Injuries quickly forgotten pass away. Personally and racially, our enemies must be forgiven. Our aim must be to create a world of fellowship and justice where no man's skin, color, religion is held against him. Love thy neighbor is a precept which could transform the world if it were universally practiced. It connotes brotherhood, and to me, brotherhood of man is the noblest concept in all human relations. Loving your neighbor means interracial, interreligious, and international. Now, don't mistake that for I'm going to bow down to white supremacy, because then she murks white supremacy through all the rest of it. I'm not talking about weak submission. In fact, this kind of love forces you to speak truth to power. And Miss Bethune spoke truth to power. In fact, Howard Thurman says in the eulogy, when Miss Bethune got rejected, she used that as fuel. She said, because she didn't base, now we go to the ways of knowing category. Mary McLeod Bethune, according to Howard Thurman and according to her own writings, but in speeches and her movement through the world, but Thurman says is that standing over her at the funeral. Oh, footnote, by the way, today also the ritual for the great Frederick Humphreys. I know the ancestors, man. He wasn't even an ancestor. I mean, I had that Florida A&M shirt on there. I talked about Fred Humphreys a couple of weeks ago. Fred Humphreys made transition since we talked about.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, his wake was yesterday and the ritual today. The great Frederick Humphreys, one of the great educators in the history of the world during the period he was the president of Tennessee State my first 2 years at Tennessee State, and then he went home to Florida A&M, and he is known as one of the greatest one of the greatest college presidents, period. Also, they just had the ritual, in fact, for the great Samuel Myers, who lived to 101 years old. Sam Myers was the head of NAFIO, which is the organization for higher education among Black folk. But before that, he was the president of Bowie State College, one of the most important educators. If you don't know these two names, then you should ask yourself why. Because now we're in another mode. Now we start thinking about higher education, and we don't get pulled off your square. In fact, Earl Richardson, who had been the president of Morgan State University, another legend, spoke at Sam Myers' ritual the other day in Bowie, Maryland, here on the campus of Bowie State University, in the Sam Myers Auditorium, by the way, of the Martin Luther King building. And he said, Myers passing marks the end of an era. And he started calling the roll of all those folks who were ancestors. And so Myers is a generation that took the baton from Mary Bethune and them, Lucy Craft Laney and them, who took the baton from Charlotte Hawkins Brown and them. In other words, so I deliberately named 3 women because, again, the narrative somehow that Black women aren't involved. That's why I showed y'all this picture too. There's one other picture I'm going to show you very quickly. But as I was saying, Thurman says about Bethune, when they rejected her, when she would do coke, she would just walk the streets of Daytona. She would go to different places and ask people for money. You need to donate to this. You need to come to my school. You need to come here and say, and if they said no, she said, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. God bless you. And keep moving. Because Thurman said her strength didn't come from other people, ways of knowing. Her strength came from beyond the place you could see with your eyes. For her, it was her Christian faith. We expand that in ways of knowing to say beyond that, the creator, the ancestors, whatever you believe animates us and moves us, that is our common source. So if people shade you, just don't get pulled off your square of truth. But I'm going to end with this because I want to mention Haiti one more time. In 1949, July 12th, 1949. July 12th, 1949, Miss Bethune traveled to Haiti, where she received the highest award the government of Haiti gives, the people of Haiti give, the Haitian Medal of Honor. Here she is wearing it around her neck with Dorothy Furby, who's another person you should know, Dorothy Furby, Dr. Dorothy Furby. Look at Miss Bethune. Bethune's no joke. She got the Haitian, she's the first woman to get the Haitian Medal of Honor. Professor Hunter, the other day, what was the phrase you used when we were in conversation, and then you evoked it again when I watched your conversation? There was you said we should be better global citizens. How did you phrase that? I'm trying to remember. When you talking about Haiti, what is our obligation is to Haiti?
I said we should be better diasporic citizens.
There it is. Yes. And we see the precedent. See, if we become better diasporic.
I just want to lean into my chills for a second. It's like, that you're being guided by the ancestors. You know that this is something that is not driven by you. You know it. But every time we get together, it's confirmed that there's something going on here. That if somebody said, y'all got to keep going, I don't know how we stop.
Wow. Now, see, you just, it's so funny. Michel Foucault, the French intellectual, there have been a number of volumes of his lectures at the Collège de France, which has been published. And I was having this conversation recently with the great Paul Coates, Ta-Nehisi's father, of course, the publisher, and one of our partners, one of the members of our collective. And we were talking about the possibility of, and we've been talking about this since last year, but now that things are shifting, we really are jailbreaking, y'all. The future of education cannot be left to a handful of universities or even K-12 education. Just as we see our young sister avant-garde come out of her family, the first word she got right is the one they missed in the spelling bee, and she's sitting at home with her pops on the couch. Understand that it is the community that produces, that nurtures. All those freedom school students come out of the community, and that the job of institutions is to receive that energy, is receive that initial grounding and continue to enhance it, which means the community should be asking the questions of the teachers or the professors. What's my child learning? I want to come sit in. I want to think. So what we're doing now is moving it back to where it has always been, and lifting up the fact that we do this collectively, and it's not a tuition-based model. It is, however, a model that requires an investment. So just like Mary McLeod Bethune is going door to door, and now there's a Bethune College, Bethune-Cookman University with narrative, what we're doing is the same thing. This small investment is an investment in all of us, and then it opens up our capacity to just continue to build. So yes, when you say that, it reminds me of something Foucault said in the introduction, and I forget how many now. Again, I'm not going in another room to look. They're probably about, at this point, maybe 5 or 6 volumes of the, so far, there are more, because they recorded all these things. They say Foucault would come into the Collège de France, and I've been to the Collège de France. In fact, the first time I went to Paris, I'm like, I got to go to the Collège de France, I got to go to the Museum, I got to go to Présence Africaine, and across the street to L'Harmattan, the publishers, and then, all these places. And I was with Theophile Obenga. Myself, Mario Beatty, Valethia Watkins, he's our dissertation advisor. We took our dissertations to Paris because they ran him out of Congo with a civil war. Shout out to the United States and France. We know how y'all do them coup d'etats, but you can't kill us all, and we're going to keep building. But at any rate, he was in Paris with his wife, and we went to, take our stuff over there, and then we went around. And I said, I got to go to the Collège de France. I want to see these rooms where Foucault was giving these lectures. Fascinated by this question, because again, in the Western tradition, intellectuals are highly respected. In African traditions, intellectuals are highly respected. Asian traditions, Native American traditions, you go around the world. But in the contemporary society, we are so socialized in a form of anti-intellectualism that if you talk more than 3 words, man, I don't want to hear it. Can you put this in a TikTok? So when I'm dipping my toe in Twitter back and forth, and I'm in conversation with somebody, and then somebody wants to make a point with a meme, I'm open to that, but I also understand that's a shorthand, as they tell the children, use your words. But at any rate, Foucault said, I would be giving a lecture, and these are transcripts. And what we're going to do with our conversations is transcripts. They'll be edited, and they will be, well, just wait, you'll see. At any rate, this is why you got to join narrative, because we need to continue to generate this ability to build our institutional capacity. Foucault said, I would come in, he'd go down, there'd be hundreds of people in a place that might supposed to seat 200, 250. It's like 400 some people in there. They jammed all the on. He would want to put his papers down, and he had to move the tape recorders. They'd already put the tape recorders in. He moved enough space, put his papers down, and he said, I go straight to work. And he said, by the end of it, I'd be exhausted. But he said, but it almost felt like it was like being an acrobat. It was like people were watching a performance, which is why you want to go back and read and think about these things. He said, because I would lecture often almost to the hour. And then I would finish. Everybody would rush forward. This had the reporters say. They rush forward, click off the tape recorders, and everybody leave. He said, and in that instant, I would be alone. And I said, that was the moment when we opened up for a conversation of a different kind. One question or one comment could have set the whole thing right. But I hadn't left the space for that. Professor Hunter, when you said, I don't see how we can stop, you captured in there one comment, like a flash of lightning, illuminating the entire enterprise. The core of what we're trying to do. In fact, what we're doing, we're in the spirit of Mary McLeod Bethune couldn't stop. Howard Thurman and her funeral, because she was kept up by something else. She wasn't kept up by trends. She wasn't kept up by cancel culture. She wasn't kept up by the latest shiny thing or the social structure trying to dictate shine and people thinking it's their idea. No, I am not, to use the words of Sean Carter, looking at you dudes. I'm looking past you. Because the thing that animates me is past me. So let me just mention one other thing since we've seen each other. And this happened yesterday. My friend Erica Asakoye, who was the first director of Philadelphia Freedom Schools, we tried to do it ourselves in 1999 in the school district. I was working for the school district full time. And at the end of that summer, myself, the great Dr. Aisha Imani, who is the CEO and the principal and the leader of the Sankofa Freedom Academy, our K-12 Freedom School in Philadelphia, also responsible for Imhotep High School in Philadelphia. Again, these African-centered schools continue to echo we, at the end of that summer, we said, no, we need somebody full-time working out of the community who is also working out of the school district, who becomes the bridge figure, because no institution we don't control should be in control of our institutional efforts. So while we were all in the school district side, we wanted somebody who was also on the school district side, but who's also really beholden to the community organizations, the Friends Neighborhood Guild, the Women's Christian Alliance, Congreso de Latinos Unidos, Asian Americans United, all the community organizations in Philadelphia who came together to make the Freedom School thing work. So we recruited Erica Asakoye Woods, then now married name Asakoye. Erica, brilliant sister, another HBCU graduate, went to Lincoln, then Howard, then got a master's degree at Harvard, just because, you know, why not? And again, not the aspiration though. Again, reading and writing is reading and writing, no matter what you do. And all three of them institutions and all the rest of them don't amount to what we're doing, because again, this ain't tuition based. This ain't ACT and SAT scoring grades based. This is desire based. And so she was the first one. We got her in the year 2000. And since then, she's done a whole lot of other stuff. Well, she, again, working with Philadelphia Freedom Schools this summer. Her niece is in town, and her niece wanted to go to pay respects to some of the ancestors who are buried in Arlington National Cemetery. You know, I ain't been leaving the house. So Erica's like, will you ride with us? I see, I ain't been out to Arlington in a minute. Yeah, okay, for you, of course, you know, we ride or die. That, you know, you don't get no closer than that. It's like me and Ajua. You know, we going. All right, here we go. We get out there. We pay respects to folk. We see Thurgood Marshall, you know, because Ruth Bader Ginsburg, all them buried in the Supreme Court justices, all there, you know, Potter Stewart. Yeah, Potter Stewart there. But Brennan, all them cats is right there. And it's funny. Well, another story. Chappie James is up that way. Then we went to see Joe Lewis. I mean, we couldn't see everybody because we were only out there for a couple of hours. And there's a lot of people out there. You know what? We should do one on Arlington. We'll do one on Arlington because of course, there used to be a plantation. So, in fact, Shanice was a park ranger out there. In fact, these sisters here, Ashley was a ranger. Ashley was a park ranger. So a lot of Black women work for the U.S. Park Service through the pipeline created at Black institutions, who then turn around and train other Black women. In fact, my friend Joy Kennard, whose father, John Kennard, founded the first Black museum in the Smithsonian, which isn't the National Museum of African American Art History, NAMAC, but is the Anacostia Community Museum in Southeast DC, right up the street from Freddie Douglass's house. Dr. Joy Kennard, another HBCU product, is now at the Charles Young House in Ohio. She used to run the district that has Mary McLeod Bethune's house and Carr G. Woodson's house. Black woman's story. But at any rate, yeah, Shanice was a ranger at when she was an undergrad at Arlington. So we out there. So we had to come back. And I was telling them about the house and this kind of thing. And so it's getting close to the hour. We got to get back. And so we're about to leave, and we walk past the trestles, the train trestles where the guides. And I had on a Tuskegee shirt. You know, some of y'all seen I've worn that particular Tuskegee shirt a couple of times, and it just says Skegee, right? So if you know, you know, which is what the sister who are Africans to other people, who are Africans to each other. Because damn near everybody working in Arlington that we saw was Black or brown, as you can imagine, right? All the guards, and which is why I said, if we want to know where somebody is, we ain't got to look at somebody who just has information on their vest or shirt. Just ask the Black people where the Black people are, because we know who we are to each other. So we asked the brother, hey man, where's Joe Lewis? Oh, he down over there by the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. Go down this road right here, man. Yeah, okay, cool. Because we already know, because I know Black people be asking you where the Black people are, right? So the sister sees me, she says, Skegee, if you know, you know. I said, that's right. She said, you see Chappie James? Yeah, he's buried up there by Thurgood Marshall. Yeah. I said, listen, we about to leave, but Medgar Evers, I forget, is he down? She tells us how to get to Medgar Evers. If we had started there, what I'm about to tell y'all next would not have happened. This is how ancestors work, Professor Hunter. We've been out there a couple of hours. And we did the obligatory stuff. John Kennedy, you know, William Taft is out there, this kind of thing. So we go across the road from where parking is and then come back toward the city where the little markers are. The military markers, that's most basically what's out there, where Medgar Evers is. My father is buried under one of those in the Veteran Cemetery in Middle Tennessee, right? So as we're walking down the steps, we can see Medgar Evers' grave. A brother in a military uniform is walking up, and two women are coming up behind him. They look to be not elderly, but older. So the brother was, you know, Black folk. How you doing, brother? Fine. How you doing? Hey, sis, how you doing? Thank you for your service, brother. He said, yeah. I said, you down visiting some relatives? Because I'm assuming y'all went to see Medgar Evers, but I'm, protocol. I'm not going to assume that you went to see Medgar Evers, except they did go to see Medgar Evers, except they didn't go to see Medgar Evers because he was a historical figure. Professor Karen Hunter, everybody watching. These were not Medgar Evers' children. Charles Evers. When we talked about Charles Evers, we talked about Charles Evers this summer. There he is, Charles Evers. Charles Evers lived to be 97 years old. He passed away last year. We had a conversation about Charles Evers. We talking about Mississippi. This was his son, 2 daughters. He said, the brother said, we just came down here to see my uncle before we left. Wait, what?
What?
I said, Charles Evers, your daddy? He said, yeah. I said, come on, man. Charles Evers, your pop just passed. How old was he? 90? He said 97. You know what they had done? They had just come from over the hill where they put the cremains of veterans. Charles had asked to be cremated, and he just got interred yesterday in Arlington National Cemetery. And 3 of the nephew, two of Medgar Evers' nieces, after they put their father in the wall, came down the hill to see their uncle. Now, that's not the end of it. Because we got to talking, and as we talked about, y'all go to narrative and look at our conversation. Charles Evers was a complicated figure, man. I mean, he went far right at one point. He really independent. He was all over. I mean, he was the mayor. He and Medgar and them, and they talk about going to try to register to vote. You got to read the life of Charles Evers. Go watch our conversation. But we said, so one of the sisters was like, yeah, we figured we had to get daddy up here. We wanted to do it right. So yeah, we figured, COVID, you couldn't come. Now you could come. But you came today, man. That's crazy. So when y'all headed back, we talking. Oh, we going back. We got to drop her off in Atlanta. Then we headed back to Mississippi. Okay. Oh, I said, so y'all ain't fly. Y'all drove. Oh yeah, we drove. We like to enjoy our trips. These are Southerners now. These are all Southerners talking to each other, right? And so we're going to talk about the Green Book in a minute too. All this going to tell the Lovecraft country, believe it or not. And so as we're having this conversation, they said, yeah, we had to drive. And then the brother said, yeah, we had to bring daddy back and bring him up here in style. And the sister said, yeah, because my daddy drove nothing but Cadillacs. So we had to bring him up here in a Cadillac. And they pointed to the and there on the street is a brand new white Cadillac. These children have brought their daddy, say he kept a Cadillac. So we just laughing, right? The rest of the story. Here comes about maybe 20 or so white people with all matching white t-shirts. Most of them children. And by children, I would say the youngest may have been 6 or 7. Oh, look like a bunch of teenagers. Look kind of like high school students, maybe some middle students. And the adults will probably look like they might have been in their 30s or 40s. And there were a couple who may have been in their 50s, remember my age. So clearly it looks like a group of children who were on a trip who've been chaperoned. They had on white shirts that said Macedonia Church. Macedonia, I think it was Baptist, Mississippi. Africana studies conceptual categories. The first category, social structure. Who are Africans to other people? The governance structure. Who are Africans to each other? They walk up as we're taking a selfie. One of the kind of 30-something young brothers, guys, is like, oh, y'all getting a picture. I'll take y'all picture. Okay, so I give him my phone. They take our picture. Me, Erica, her niece, Madison, and the 3, the nephew, 2 nieces of Medgar Evers, children of Charles Evers. We take a picture. It's very nice. Thank you. So the brother says, do y'all know who Medgar Evers is? To a person, the children.
Oh, God.
Almost to a person, the adults. Except the 2 older ones were like, oh, yeah, I know Medgar Evers. Oh, okay. And so I'm not mad. I'm not happy. I'm Black. So I don't care. Miss Bethune love God. I love God, but my attitude is a little different. I leave you love too, Miss Bethune, and I love you. My love for them is righteous indignation. So, you know, that's what the governance structure is. We got room for everybody to argue and debate and digress. While I'm loving Ta-Nehisi and Nicole gonna be around, because we're gonna have some hella wonderful agreement and disagreement. And it's gonna be all propelled with the idea we all training our young people. We got to do that. That's what narrative is about. We all don't agree and disagree. So anyway, you know, so I'm really indifferent, but I'm like, oh, wait a minute, wait till tomorrow. We talk about this, right? So the guy who took the picture says, well, I'm from Alabama. What does both of me? So? Right. But they live in Mississippi. So it's okay. So then the children start telling them a little bit. And we say, hey man, y'all be safe. All right. And of course, it reverts to the governance structure long enough for us to walk away, as they each of them say to us, as we say to them, y'all be safe. Safe travels back home. Traveling mercies, as old folk used to say. And they said, yeah, y'all go with God. Y'all get home safe too. This is black people, the governance. Then they revert back and they start helping them understand who their uncle is and who their father is. So as we're walking back to the car, I say, you know what's funny about that? I don't put that on the children. But do you know that every plane that goes out of Jackson, Mississippi and comes into Jackson, Mississippi comes and goes out of the Medgar Wiley Evers International Airport? So unless they've never been on a plane, you know, in Mississippi and Jackson.
But you know, it speaks to the abject ignorance that people are comfortable sitting.
Come on now.
That you could go to a school, live on a street, have a whole ass town and an airport named for somebody that you don't even know. That's one of the first things I talk to my students about. Like, who's the president of the college? Who is the founder of this college? You need to know. Like, you're spending money. The first thing you should do is know the place that you're in. But this is what's wrong with this country. And they want to talk about critical race theory. Oh my goodness.
In fact, you know what's so funny you said that, Professor Hunter? Because if that whole thing would have been broadcast, the critics would have said out of the social structure, see, y'all causing division. You trying to act like they should be ashamed because they don't know who Medgar Evers is. They should be ashamed. You know why he's buried in Arlington? The man was a veteran. He was a veteran. His brother was a veteran. Jeremiah Wright is a veteran. Y'all always in there, unless some of y'all gonna spill some blood to defend that rag that you will never see me pledge to. And I don't give a damn, because citizenship ain't about that unless it is. And if it is about that, then what Misha Green previewed in Lovecraft's Country? Oh, hell no. That's just that's a forecast. Do you understand? And that's why, well, no, let me just, okay.
Let's go. And for those of you who have not seen the Dick Gregory, the one and only Dick Gregory documentary,
yes.
Medgar Evers is featured prominently. I learned some things about the man. First of all, that I already knew he was a badass. But the level to which that he, you know, was not about, you know, he wasn't having it. And we mythological, you know, there's a mythology around our civil rights leaders as being these docile eunuchs. Right. Yeah, you know, yeah, they are, you know,
eunuch.
No, you know,
not Medgar Evers.
Medgar Evers would handle his business is all.
Handle his business. And if that coward Ballard and Bader Beckwith wasn't across the street in the bushes, shot him in the back, pump, he would have got lit up, because Evers had his stuff in the trunk. Medgar Evers stayed strapped. Y'all talked to, again, my very good friend, the great Joyce Ladner, who died with him before he went and was assassinated, who part of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. But you talked to Dory. You talked to Mama Dory. Medgar Evers was no joke. And him and Dick Gregory. And
Gregory would have probably been there that night. Not gotten that phone call. Y'all watch the documentary.
You got to watch the one and only Dick Gregory, as we talked about. I mean, a brilliant piece of work. Shout out to the Gregory family, to Mama Lil, to all the children, Christian, of course, who was the driving force. You know, after I saw it, you know, I texted Yohanse and Ayana, the two children I'm close to, you know, the youngest, and I'm like, man, you did your pops right, because they let him talk. And we talked about that last week. So y'all can go back and look, but you got to watch the, and then of course, and we're going to talk about it in a minute, we might even be able to weave in Summer Soul, but the question of the question of what is happening now. In fact, let's just pause here so we can set it up right. In our Africana Studies framework, we have those 6 categories. And the first category, of course, social structure, who are Africans to other people. That applies anywhere in the world. We understand that race is one of the defining characteristics in the contemporary world. It is not the only one. In fact, this is the latest issue of Monthly Review. Try to read everything. This is interesting. There's an article in here called "How Social Classes Influence Political Life," which is very interesting. Vicente Navarro, who is at Johns Hopkins, emeritus professor at Pompeu Fabra University. Very interesting. He talks about the fact that if you ask them whether they're upper, middle, or lower class in the United States, Professor Hunter, we already know the answer to this, but which one of the three do you think people pick?
If we ask people?
Yeah, just ask random people.
I think most people think they're middle class.
That's exactly right. And he says that, right? No surprises there. He says, but when you introduce another option, are you upper, middle, working, or lower class? What do most people pick?
Probably working.
Exactly. And he says, when you match the numbers up in terms of what people make, if you put upper class, he says $100,000 or more, you have most of the people going to say middle class. Some going to say upper class. 75,000 to 99,000. Most of those people going to say middle class, and you see more say working class. 50,000 to 74,999. It's not quite evenly split between working and middle. It gets to 30,000 to 49,000 before you see even a little sliver of lower class. And then 20,000 to 29,000, still not quite. A lot of people say lower. They say working over middle. Look at it. Mm-hmm. You see that the black is lower. People who ain't making no money still want to say they lower class. You understand? They'll say working class if you give them the option. But if you don't put working class in, they'll say middle, as you say, no matter how low you go in terms of money. That is because the socialization in this country, this hyper-capitalist country, even as wealth inequality has exploded during this pandemic, continues to have people under the illusion, two illusions. One, that somehow their reality in terms of material conditions isn't what it is. And number two, that perhaps they can't do anything about it. We can intervene. This is what Ms. Bethune was saying. This is what, and that Mary McLeod Bethune led voting registration and voting drives in Florida in the 1930s and 40s.
And ran up against the Klan.
The straight Klan. Come on, Professor Hunter. Come on. I mean, we've seen the straight Klan come back now, but not in the way it was then. Let's not pretend that what we face now is somehow worse than what she faced. And this is before the voting rights cases busting up the white primaries. This is before Albright and Nixon. This is before Fred Gray and them. Fred Gray was a lawyer. Dr. Gamillion and Tuskegee, Gamillion versus Lightfoot. This is before the great, cases, the Katzenbach case. This is before the Voting Rights Act. They at war. And guess what? Miss Bethune is like, yeah, that's all you got? All right, let me say my prayer. Pow! Now what you think? In other words, this is what you're gonna fight. You got to be fortified. So yes, that's right. So I mentioned that to say that the social structure narrative then begins to harden in societies around the idea of a we, of a collective identity. In the United States, that we is anchored in settler colonial mythology. Our founding fathers. We're better than that. This is not the vision of the founding fathers. All of this delusional. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me be a little bit more charitable. I can hear Miss Bethune. All of this aspirational. Yes, aspirational. That's better than delusional. Malcolm would say delusional. I'll say aspirational. In other words, but make no mistake, it's something you want to be true. It has never been true. So when you say this country continues to make mistakes, my response is, how do you define mistakes? This is going according to plan, which is why we can predict what comes next. So I'm just setting it up that way. So in that conversation, now that's the United States. You go to a place like Haiti, they too have a founding mythology because these all aren't all the same people. So when you look at Haiti, the social structure question, who are Africans or other people, we widen that lens out to look at the global circumstances that create Haiti. Enslavement, settler colonialism, inter-European conflict. And then we ask the governance structure question, who are these Africans to each other? And we see somehow they are able to build enough unity, initially unity in opposition to oppression, to create a modern Black state. Now, that in itself is a remarkable achievement. But to sustain that state over centuries, when the social structure has basically taken a sworn oath to try to kill you up to July the 10th, 2021, when your propped up prime minister asks for the United States to intervene, and on cue, as if they are like, roll sound, roll camera, pop, here they come again. The playbook. First thing you do is call them wild. In fact, let me just go back. Let me just take 10 seconds because, you know, we could all write these stories in the New York Times. Let's just go to the first paragraph. After 24 hours of wild gun battles with suspects in the assassination of Haiti's president, the nation's authorities announced the arrest of 20 people and called on the United States to send troops to help protect crucial infrastructure. You could have wrote that last year, year before, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. All right. You start with wild, lawless. You move to the nation's authority. Told y'all it's 11 elected officials in Haiti. And then prime minister and the other guy was vetted. One of them was on faculty in New York. He went to the New School for his PhD. The other is the medical doctor who was in charge of the cholera response. And you know what happened in Haiti with cholera and the UN and all that mess. Not to mention that Venezuela gave them some money and everything got embezzled under the guy they killed. And I mean, come on now. And the OAS, tell you, Organization of American States, came in to talk, and they figured out, okay, this guy here, we can trust him being the prime minister. And they say 18 of the 20 that they nabbed are Colombians. I'm like, wait a minute, hold on, Colombia? What Colombia got to do with it? The president of Colombia said the OAS should intervene. The UN Security Council met earlier this week. They try to figure out, Joe Biden talking about, we're not going to send anybody in. Man, come on. Y'all know y'all had this conversation and gamed it out of the State Department and in the security room, and y'all gonna figure out what y'all gonna do. Finally, the Colombians, come on now. Do you know one of the biggest things that goes on in the illicit, there are two illicit, well, there are a number of illicit things, but come out of Haiti that the Haitian people don't want, don't need, and trying to fight against, but people keep propping them up? One of them is sex trafficking. Others, cocaine. The Colombian cartel, the narcos, love Haiti because they can fly the stuff into Haiti and then from there send it to your place. But at any rate, the point is that all of this is being scripted. But in Haiti, when you ask the governance question, who are these Africans to each other? You see the NGO. Okay, they trying to invade. Some of them trying to do good. Some of them just trying to get paid. Shout out to the Clinton Foundation. You have others, but Black people are trying to live. They want their country to succeed. And so they're not trying to break up Haiti. They want Haiti to be free. This is why Randall Robinson, in a book he wrote after the debt, after the reckoning, and a book that we then picked for Freedom School one year to read and invited him back. And he came back and spent time with our young people. It was called Haiti, An Unbroken Agony. And one day, maybe I'll wear that shirt. We had the Haiti Liberté, you know, and we did the whole history of Haiti in Freedom Schools that summer. Because, of course, there has a Philadelphia connection another time. Again, go to narrative, look at the conversations we had. But I raise that because the idea of who we are, who is the we, is going to look different in Haiti than it does in the United States. And for a long time, who we are in the United States, when Black people said we, there's a critical mass of Black people, regardless of where they are in the class structure, who included in that we Africa and the Caribbean. You saw Miss Bethune with the highest honor they give in Haiti around her neck that she got in 1949. And in that last will and testament, she talks about that global commitment to humanity. And she names Asia and Africa and Latin America and the indigenous people. In other words, when she says love, her love is not tied up and to the four corners of a flag with stars and stripes on it. And that's a different type of thing. And that becomes an act of heresy in a social structure that says love must mean you love George Washington, you love me, you love what I say, right or wrong, my country, right or wrong. No, okay. Well, then we getting off the we boat. And so anytime you start thinking about, let's go to the next category, ways of knowing. The ways of knowing category is about spiritual ways of knowing. It's about intellectual, philosophical ways of knowing. We didn't want to say philosophy. We don't say religion. Those words are too small. It's like, how do you conceive of thinking about yourself in the world, thinking about the nature of reality, all those kind of things. So what you see coming out of ways of knowing are different ways of grappling with this question of who we are as human beings. And as people of African descent, there are some very particular ways that come out of Africa that aren't the same as when they came out of Africa, but they commingle with the experiences since then for those who were in the diaspora, and they become different, complex, often contradictory, often resonant chords that congeal together and have a consensus about ways of knowing in the world. And they animate us. One of the things Howard Thurman says at Mary McLeod Bethune's funeral is, Miss Bethune understood. No. I'm mixing something up. I'll come back to that in a second, because I'm trying to remember now the source that I was just reading this the other day. Of course, my man, very good brother. This is a brilliant book. In fact, I recommend, this is another book I recommend. My friend Errol Henderson has written a book called The Revolution Will Not Be Theorized, Cultural Revolution in the Black Power Era. Big, thick book, SUNY Press. One of the things Errol talks about is we often talk about Black Power figures, Malcolm X, Queen Mother Moore, so many others. We talk about them as political figures, but we don't often think about them as intellectuals or as political theorists. And he said they absolutely were, most of them, political theorists as well. He says one of the challenges that you see in so-called revolutionary theory among Black people in the diaspora, particularly the United States, thinking now even about Summer of Soul, which, maybe I'll tie it to this, tie it to that a couple of ways, but we'll come back to this. But no, we can leave it right here where it is right now, because when you see in fact, let me just pause here and ask you, Professor Hunter, you saw it. We talked about it a little bit, right?
Yes.
For those of you who haven't seen Summer of Soul, will you tell them what that is before I say anything else?
You want me to tell them?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, we both saw
it. So at the same time that there was a Woodstock, Black people over was a 6-week period. 50,000 folk went to what is now Marcus Garvey Park in Harlem. That's what it's called now, right? Marcus Garvey Park in Harlem. Yes. Came together for a concert that brought everybody. We're talking gospel, jazz, Max Roach. We talking Jesse Jackson. We talking Gladys Knight, the Fifth Dimension. I mean, everybody. Stevie Wonder playing the drums. Young Stevie, sexy Stevie Wonder, sexy Jesse too. I was like, okay, Jesse.
I saw you out there, so capable for Jesse, no question.
But no. Yeah, and was somehow lost for 50 years in the basement of somebody.
That's what they say.
But yeah, but you said you were using snippets from that concert in your classes. So it wasn't lost.
No, it wasn't lost. I mean, maybe the footage wasn't. The footage, some of the footage had been seen.
Okay.
A lot of that footage you saw, I saw, we all saw. If you see the documentary Summer of Soul, maybe that's the first time why it has been seen by a lot. But some of that footage had trickled out over the years, because a couple of those performances, Nina Simone, for example, I've shown that every year in my Africana Studies classes. And we're going to come back to Cinnamon, where you gonna run to? Cinnamon, where you gonna run to? I ran to the rock. Rock to hide me, ran to the rock. We're gonna talk about Nina Simone in a minute, and Cinnamon in the context of Lovecraft country. But the whole idea,
the one thing I just want, when they were talking about going to the moon, because that was the same year.
How about
Black people were like, we need food and resources.
Come on,
y'all talking about the moon? How that? Can we eat the moon?
Can we eat the moon?
I'm like, putting things in context, and I think about now all of the so-called billionaires getting on rocket ships for millions of dollars for 5 minutes in space. Millions of dollars, people getting seats to go to space, and we can't figure out the space that we're in right now and make it viable for everybody.
That's exactly right. You had our brother Cornel West.
Let me say, not we, them.
Yeah. No, well, as Bethune, we all on the ball. If it blow up, if it's a hell below, we all gonna go. As you had our friend Cornel West, our brother, talking about that on the narrative side. If y'all on narrative, y'all saw that conversation between Cornel West and Karen Hunter. So I mean, and of course, when you think about Curtis Mayfield and Freddie's Dead, the song we know. When Curtis Mayfield says, we can deal with rockets and dreams, but reality, what does it mean? Don't be misled, because Freddie's dead. Or think of Fred. That's what he says, right? And of course, years later, Sign of the Times, Prince says, silly, when a rocket ship explodes and everybody's still trying to fly. Yeah. You know what? These people dealing with rockets. And of course, during that period, the Summer of Soul, during the period of those concerts, Woodstock 1969, shortly thereafter, you have a young brother in his 20s named Gil Scott Heron. A rat done bit my sister Nell. But Whitey's on the moon. Her arms and legs began to swell, and Whitey's on the moon. In other words, y'all, he said, I think I'll send these doctor bills, air mail special. And then you hit a sister in the crowd to Whitey on the moon. In other words, y'all not going nowhere, Branson. Y'all not going nowhere, Bezos. We hell no. But to be very clear about it, we have to understand that the concept of evading responsibility is very deep in the social structure of imperialism. And it's also very deep in the concept of what you do after you've gone everywhere you can go, but you still want to create markets to create more profit for yourself. In fact, Kwame Nkrumah, one of his later books called it neo-colonialism. That's the last stage of imperialism, building off V.I. Lenin, but then saying, no, imperialism ain't the last stage, brother. Neo-colonialism, that's what's going on in Haiti. People talk about neoliberalism. We talked about neoliberalism a few sessions back. We had a conversation. The whole idea that you're going to subjugate these people to your wishes. And so while people are looking at Jen Psaki and Joe Biden on what the United States is going to do, while the New York Times talking about chaos and sending the army in, while the president of Colombia is saying to the Organization of American States, another client organization, you need to come in here now. While all that's going on, ask yourself a very basic question. Did Fruit of the Loom and Levi Strauss, both who have profit-making factories in Haiti, did they close their doors? The answer to that question will do you a lot better than trying to figure out which of these, whether it's Leon Charles or Matthias Pierre or Claude Joseph or Clement Noel or these characters who are now down there now saying, I'm the prime minister, I'm the judge. Okay, yeah, that's all that stuff. That's sock puppets. That's sock puppet conversation coming out the social structure. Ask yourself, in that same social structure, did Levi Strauss and Fruit of the Loom, them drawers y'all bought at Walmart, did the price go up? No. Okay, then carry on. We don't give a damn who the prime minister is. Don't close the factory. So, and that's not D or R. It's not Democrat or Republican. That's not Trump or Biden. That's not Obama or Clinton. No. At that point, your job is to keep the factories running. Understand that. Well, it's a whole nother conversation for another day. We talked about that a little bit. But so in Summer of Soul, that documentary, we see, and this is what Errol is talking about in The Revolution That Will Not Be Theorized, there's political philosophy there. You mentioned it in terms of just regular folk who are there. And by the way, anytime you got a festival that takes place over weeks and you got 50,000 people show up, it's not forgotten. Let's scrub ourselves of this language.
50,000 each week.
What's that? 50,000
each week.
Mm-hmm. No question. And in fact, it's so funny when we saw Aminata Mosika, who we know as Abby Lincoln, encourage y'all to go. No, I see how the black girls. I'm not gonna do it because they too far. They way over there. There's Abby Lincoln, the great jazz artist at the time, married to Max Roach, the great jazz artist, who called jazz a four-letter word. Again, ways of knowing. I'm not gonna let y'all pigeonhole me in this little four-letter word called jazz. But at any rate, she had an African name as well, Aminata Mosika, and she wrote in an issue of Black World about, the Black woman's struggle, the cultural struggle, how it's part of the Black community struggle. Again, some people might say, it's an intersectional analysis. Yeah, if you look at race, class, and sex as categories people somehow live separately. No, to create intersectionality, you got to divide it up in the first place. And I'm not going to do that. I think we can be very complicated, very contradictory, have real robust debates and discussions and move forward from the point of departure in a governance formation that we are we. So the idea that somehow I would side with white men because they're men is so utterly absurd in the face. Anyway, let's not even get into that. But the point, it's just silly, but we're not going to talk about it. So anyway, watching Max Roach and Abby Lincoln perform reminded me of another day in that park. No, this was it was Garvey. It wasn't Garvey. It wasn't Central Park. It was Garvey. I remember this because it was the year Max Roach made transition, and they had the funeral, and I missed the funeral by one day. We were in Kemet. We were in Egypt, and I was busting my tail because we've been away for now a couple of weeks, 2.5 weeks, and I'm in Philadelphia at the time, living in Philly, commuting to DC, but we flew into JFK. And so normally I would come into JFK and I'd take the train back into town, whatever, and go to DC. I'm sorry, to Philly. But this time, I arranged to get one of my friends pick me up. Yeah, come get me. Why? Because I'm gonna spend the night because I missed Max Roach's funeral, but they're going to have a tribute to Roach in the park. So I'm watching this footage, and I'm not there in 69. I'm 4 years old, but I'm there the year Max Roach passed because the tribute was supposed to be anchored by Abby Lincoln, who, of course, they had once been married. And this is why she had gone to the funeral. You know, after the funeral, she wasn't feeling up to performing. So I went, and again, movement and memory. The movement and memory category asks, how did or do Black people remember this moments in time, historical figures, people like that? I stood there with thousands of other people and watched, not Abby Lincoln, who I was hoping would perform, but I understand you're elder, this was your man's, and y'all go back and get the 1960 album with Max Roach, Abby Lincoln, Babatunde Olatunji on it. We Insist, the Freedom Now suite. Oh my God. Oh my God. Anyway, she didn't perform, but she deputized another sister to sing in her stead. So we all stood there and listened to Cassandra Wilson out of Jackson, Mississippi. Who does know who Medgar Evers is? Jackson State College, Jackson State University, performed instead of her Jegna, Abby Lincoln. It was brilliant. It was just a beautiful thing. But I'm saying that to say that these things are not forgotten. That's why we created the movement and memory category. How did or do we remember this? Could they be better remembered? Yes. Are there many people who never knew that happened who have now been introduced to it? Absolutely. But if you watch that documentary and you listen very carefully, what you will hear is the governance structure. What you will hear are ways of knowing, correct entry and exit. The governance structure, for example, the Black church. When Billy Davis Jr. and Marilyn McCoo are sitting there, both of whom you had conversations with, public-facing conversations, radio, you put it on YouTube, having these conversations, and Marilyn McCoo is like, well, Billy came out of St. Louis, he came out the church, so he knew all about those chords and those structures. So while people thought we might be white because of what we were singing about, the way we was putting that thing together, that came out of the church. I'm like, see, up and away in my beautiful balloon. Or one of our favorites together, one less bell to answer, one less egg to fry, one less man to pick up after. All I do is, and then you hear them come in, cry. She's saying, y'all thought we was white? Listen. And she tells it in the documentary, said Dave saying, and she said, for us coming out of West Coast, coming out what we was doing the fifth dimension, when the moon, Black people are like, yeah, okay, that's cool. Hey man, play that shit again. She said, this was like a command performance. We are in Harlem. These are our people. And they're not just there as performers. I'm gonna say exactly what Errol is saying with regard to the political figures of the time, and apply it a little bit to the cultural figures of the time. And Jesse is there, of course, but Steve, you don't need no coaching in this. These are also political figures because they're talking about Black culture. They're talking about Black politics. They're talking about the importance of coming together. They're talking about all that. So this is not, and the original title, the way I understand it from reading some of the stuff and hearing Questlove and talk, was Black Woodstock. It was like, nah. Why? Because it ain't no Black Woodstock. It's Black Woodstock in the social structure. And I wish we could say that Woodstock was the white soul fest, but guess what? We don't need to make direct correlative comparisons because it ain't no we. So stop trying to narrate us by your standards, and we'll stop trying to narrate you by our standards, and we can all live in this settler colony that you committed violence on, but on these renegotiated terms, which brings us to the piece that we came here to discuss, and we just get into it, but I think we can make this work, and that's Lovecraft country. For many people, when we say Lovecraft country, y'all be like, wait, what? So if you don't mind, Professor Hunter, help us understand, because I think you were one of the first people I saw talking about this when the news broke.
Oh, Michi, can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Michi, the creator of Lovecraft Country, which is an adaptation of a book, but she completely remixed it into what I think was a groundbreaking series. I mean, just oof. So HBO, who brought us Game of Thrones for some reason, able to put all that money into dragons, even though they destroyed Ending. That's because anyway, I have a whole, I'm really mad at George R.R. Martin. Finish your damn book so that this didn't have to happen. Anyway, your series, they decided not to renew for a second season, despite the ratings, despite the attention, despite the critical acclaim, despite all of the amazing performances. They decided that they were going to move on. And I wonder if this is why. I'm going to share the map.
Good. Here we go.
I hope I can get it up. Come on, system preferences. Oh, I suck right now. All right, I don't know if I can share.
That's all right. Let me see if I can. No, I don't think I have one printed.
Okay. All right. Come on. All right. Share. I can do it. Carr. I can do it.
I know you can.
All right. Come on, y'all. All right. Maybe I can't.
That's okay.
All right. Keep talking while I figure out.
Well, while we're doing it, let's just remember that the demographics of it, when Mary McLeod Bethune was writing, she wrote a piece. Remember, we talked about this is in another section. What the Negro Wants. We talked about that a while. Miss Bethune got a piece in here, sandwiched between Gordon Hancock. We still got to talk about Hancock in North Carolina, and Frederick Patterson, who helped found the United Negro College Fund, called Certain Unalienable Rights. When Miss Bethune writes her piece, then this was published. Remember Rayford Logan? We talked about all that in 1944. Black folk are a fraction of this country. The demographics have changed. You get it?
No.
Okay, cool. So as the demographics change, the world of 2021 is very different than the world of 1944, even in terms of demographics in this country. And what you see in the popular culture is, at its social structure, you see us a lot more in the quote unquote white stream. People say mainstream, but that's not mainstream. This is mainstream to me. Again, you got to think differently about it. So that is not just because of enlightened people. That's because market share. You got a consumer base you're trying to sell to. And so you'll see more of us, not nearly as many as we want, but you'll see more of us in these platforms that reach vast audiences immediately. Like our platform is reaching a lot of people. It reaches more and more people. We want to reach everybody, but we understand we're building this from the inside. In other words, we're doing this. Whereas if you put this on a platform everybody has immediate access to, it's like putting the heroin, boom, and you say it right. But when you see us in it, you're seeing a social structure that's taking a sense of our various texts and practices, traces of our cultural meaning making. In other words, the sixth and final category of our 6 categories in Africana studies. And they are evoking it now deeply enough to resonate, meaning it gets closer to the things we feel. Like when you see, there we go.
I'm so dogged and determined. No, I wasn't gonna let it defeat me. Ooh.
No, of course not.
Shoot.
So what are we looking at, Professor Hunter?
What are we looking at? So in Misha Green shared this tweet. She said this was what she envisioned for season 2 of Lovecraft. It begins in a new world, and that world is a country that sits precisely where the United States used to sit. Welcome to the sovereign states of America. And what you see in the green, the tribal nations of the West, which I imagine all of the indigenous people that were pushed on the Trail of Tears out to the West, reclaimed. And we had a wonderful conversation about Mount Rushmore. Y'all could check that out as well.
Yes.
On the southern hemisphere, where it's Florida, parts of Texas, Louisiana, all Alabama, all of that, Georgia, North and South Carolina, parts of Virginia, most of Virginia, West Virginia, is the new Negro Republic. Something called the Jefferson Commonwealth is in the far east, northeast, where Maine, Rhode Island, New York, all of that little piece of Jersey. And then right in the middle, very small space there called the White Lands. Now, what Misha Green describes the White Lands as is a space of like zombies.
Yes. Yes.
But
what do you think about that? What do you think about her characterization? Because of course it was too obvious, and so she came back with, let me tell y'all. What do you think about it?
What are zombies? They're mindless creatures that are insatiable and have to eat and destroy everything in its wake.
Lord have mercy.
Brains, so they're not very sentient, or they don't use the brains. They eat the brains. And they can only. Well, anyway, I won't get.
What you trying to say? Right. The White Walkers. We never had no problem when it was Game of Thrones and it was the White Walkers.
That that and historically, you think about, I was watching before we came in. I like to watch those home renovation shows and things, and there's one on it's called Backyard Renovations, and they're in the forest. They're cutting down trees to build tree houses.
Yes.
And I'm like, the forest, you displaced 20 plus trees that need, and then they go, and I was like, oh, the water, the soil is too soft because you uprooted the things that are there to absorb. I mean, it's like the fact that the climate right now, y'all in the places where it's super hot and it's raining and the storms and blowing over trees and that didn't happen because of nature. That happened because of that white lands right there.
That's right. Now that's interesting. So do you think that this preview from what I guess the writers call it, you would know this much better than I would, that's what they call a kind of broad conceptual universe? And then she said none of the episodes have been drafted yet or written, but this is what they call the Bible. I guess that's the playbook for the whole season.
Right.
I see. You think that was enough to scare the hell out of them? They say hell no.
You said it was. I want to see this play out. Now she just cut a deal with
Apple, right?
Apple, yes.
I saw that.
So we may see it. Maybe Apple has the testicular fortitude to put. Oh my God, maybe Apple has something HBO does not.
Well, I mean, yeah. It's interesting though, isn't it? Because first of all, as I said, you would know this as well better than I ever will, that there are a number of different moving parts in these kind of conversations. Is it personalities? Is it a business deal? Is it conceptual, not conceptual? Because the easy thing, and this was my visceral response, as I said, and you remember, they didn't want to see this. But then I thought, no, this is driven by capitalism. And so if you've watched some of the Apple series, For All Mankind, for example, but the narratives, and I can hear Holly Green in my ear right now saying, no, don't be naive about this. Because one of the things you hear from the creators of Lovecraft Country is there is no white point of entry. Holly always talks about that point of entry. In other words, white folks are asking out of governance structure, their governance structure, who they each other, what's my point of entry?
Do they ask that question?
Well, no, but I'm saying in the sense that there are no prominent white characters to cheer for. So that when Holly says point of entry, he means that you can't make no movie about a rebellion of enslaved people without some sympathetic white. I mean, when you look at that Harriet movie, you got, they weren't even creative about shit. You didn't name this guy Bigger Long or some old beach. I mean, shit, a 5-year-old could have come up with that name. But you got this sympathetic white slave man. I mean, in other words, that's the point of entry. Holly's saying white people are not going to watch this if it's just black people. But somehow Misha Green and them had white people involved, but they're on the periphery and they're not good. And I'm saying you're dipping your toe in the water, which is underscoring the point that I was about to make. When you see the demographics in this country change, and when you see the globe in terms of geopolitics change, you can't keep running out the same thing to continue to dominate media, dominate market share. We're not going to watch it in the same way. So there's enough in Lovecraft Country that resonated to evoke it deeply enough to resonate. However, as was the case in Watchmen, as is usually the case in historical stuff, whether it be Glory, which is, in the light of years after, no, hell no. But ultimately, you take the thing that resonates with us, the music we like, a racial theme, police violence, black people resisting, but you figure out a way to drive it back into a ditch with reconciling it with this aspirational notion of we. So, but what happens is what the social structure is doing that in a way because they want to keep the entity whole, whether they want to keep their corporate stuff whole, whether they want to keep the United States whole. But in the governance structure,
I want to do that. Hold on. Okay,
that's good. This is good. Actually, this is very good. We can lay that there for in the governance structure. Black folk have always had this rich, robust, often contradictory, often we agree to disagree, or we disagree and don't agree to disagree. Debate and dialogue about what, quote unquote, we want, and it's formal and it's informal. Class plays a major role. I mean, there's always been a kind of thin, petty bourgeois, certainly after enslavement, among black folk across the range, who somehow think perhaps the best strategy is to assimilate, or they can outsmart this social structure at some point, or coexist with it and skimming off the top of the oppression structure. And education plays a role. We, whether we're socialized not to study, to value basketball over spelling, and then the child comes and shows you can and should do it all, at which point that blows it up, or the idea that we should just be trying to live and react. And so we continue to live and react. Now, how does that relate to what we're seeing here? This is the thing that I found fascinating. Many of the things we're talking about now, find fascinating about this. First of all, let's just deal with Lovecraft country. Okay? And I didn't pull any of the H.P. Lovecraft books. I pulled one, but I'm just going to leave that over there because he was a racist. But, they have a bust they give out for one of the big science fiction prizes. They took his face off it. You're not going to do that anymore because the guy's a racist. And, the whole idea, fascinating guy, brilliant writer, but that brilliance is emptied into the notion of a hierarchy of humanity, or better yet, a kind of concentric circles of humanity. And who is at the center of defining humanity? White people. So white people are the best humans that they're ever going to be. No surprise there in terms of social structure logic. So what happens is,
pause for a second. How ironic is it that Misha Green took that book written by a racist?
But see, no. This is oh my God. Wow. Watch this, Professor. Watch this. Here's the book. The book ain't by H.P. Lovecraft. The book is by a dude named Matt Ruff, who's born in 1965. This is the book Lovecraft Country. I encourage y'all to get this book. You should read the book and watch the series if you want. But the book and the series overlap, and then they don't overlap. So, for example, the series runs past the book about halfway through the series. There are 10 episodes. So about halfway through the series, you see that crew, and there's some hell of actors, Jonathan Majors, Journey Smollett, of course, Michael Kenneth Williams, what's our brother's name? Brother and sister, Courtney B. Vance and Ingenue Ellis. But by the time you get episode 1, Sundown, right? You've seen the Sundown Towns. And by the way, we're going to talk about those in a minute. Let me pull this very good book, just so y'all know it. I'm going to put it here by Candace Taylor, Overground Railroad, The History of the Green Book and the Roots of Black Travel in America. Oh, this book right here. We're going to come to that in a second. But Whitey on the Moon is the name of the second episode. That's that Gil Scott Heron thing that he's doing. It ties into what the brother said in Summer of Soul. Y'all talking about right? Holy Ghost number 3. Then you hear that piano, right? Because they're closing out with, and it just sends an electric shock through Black folk with a piece of cultural meaning making that Nina Simone recorded. When did she record that? 65. Cinnamon, where you gonna run to? Then there's a famous 10-minute live version that she did. Very important. But that song, when you look at the credits for who is attributed to, she didn't write that song, and she's pulling from several previous recordings. But I want to go to one that really sets the template, and it's called Cinnamon, but the echo, it comes out of church. It's called You Better Run. If you want to hear You Better Run, then you got to go to somebody who talk about Stevie Wonder's connections. We talked about Stevie. Remember that time we talked about Stevie in the car accident and Isaiah Tucker and the Dixie Hummingbirds and all them. That song was recorded by the great Swan Silvertones, the great Claude Jeter, the Reverend Claude Jeter, who sang bass with the Dixie Hummingbirds, then eventually went to falsetto. So if y'all go look up Cinnamon and put in Swan, WSWAN, which was like a bakery that sponsored them after they came together in the 30s. You go look for Claude Jeter and you'll hear that song. And it comes, how they do that quartet, right? So you'll hear Claude come in, well, you better run. Then the brother comes in, run when I say. They hit their, well, you better run when I say somebody's calling me, you better run. When I say somebody's calling me, you better run when I say somebody's calling me, I feel like my time ain't long. Well, that early in the morning should sound, and the dead end, the Christ is gonna rise. Lord, if you ain't got good religion, down in hell you'll open up your eyes. Well, you better run when I say run, when I'm telling you something, I run when I say somebody's calling me, you run, better run. The whole idea, again, Mary McLeod Bethune, again, ways of knowing. Where I live is not my home. You better run. Because guess what? No flag, no government, no gun trumps the cosmic order that is going to be imposed on you for sinning, for doing evil, for coming against me. And so, whether it be Curtis Mayfield saying, if there's hell below, we all gonna go, or whether it be Cinnamon, where you gonna run to? Now, we saw that in Watchmen. We saw, because it's cute to drop in black music. Because people say, oh, I like that. I like that. Yeah. In the social structure, I like that. I like that. In the governance structure, yeah, I like that. Because you don't even know what you're listening to. So everybody watching Summer of Soul, the documentary, and when you see Mahalia Jackson come out there with all that rouge on her face and that wig, that hair hat, and you see her nearer the end of her life than she was at the height of her powers, and she bring Mavis Staples up there by Chicago by way of Mississippi, who damn well, her pops and all the rest of them knew who Medgar Evers was coming out of that. Go look at their recordings during the period. And she said, baby, come help me sing this song. And Mavis Staples tells that story. And Mahalia Jackson's like, yeah, come help me sing this song. But of course, if you're coming out of the governance structure and Africana ways of knowing, then when she says, come help me sing that song, that don't mean I'm going to give you the mic right now. I'm going to wreck the first verse, and then I want you to sing. Come on now. Wait a minute. No, hell no. She's saying that she tore that song up, turned that microphone over. The younger sister came in, hit it, didn't try to outshine, and then they both carried it home. Mahalia Jackson is near the end. Mahalia Jackson out of New Orleans, now the same city as our young sister Avant-Garde. Mahalia Jackson say, hey, baby. But see, that's intergenerational. That's a bond, and you enjoying the music in the social structure, but you understand they're calling on something that transcends that flag. So while you call something a black Woodstock, they not thinking about Woodstock. We working at our soul salvation. So when you hear Nina Simone at the end of those episodes, that critique, black folk immediately know what that is. This ain't good versus, this is good versus evil. And in this case, the evil are white people. Cinnamon, you better run to. And at the end of all of that, they don't riff. Cinnamon, as she sings it, doesn't follow the lyrics of Claude Jeter, Swan Silvertones, the other people who recorded. Peter Tosh and Bunny Wailer, the Wailers, yes, the Bob Marley Wailers, recorded a version of Cinnamon. Go look it up. Their whole thing, Babylon will fall. In other words, and when you white boys go run to the rocks ain't gonna hide you. You run to the river, it's gonna be on fire. In other words, you can't hide nowhere. This map, in other words.
Oh, let's let me tell you what Misha Green said about it. Yes. The White Lands. The White Lands is a territory that is completely overrun by zombies, as I mentioned. Most of them of the slower variety, but with pockets of fast-moving zombies too. One price of the quote origin spell was the creation of a zombie population. Yes. Origin spell. Okay. Years into the epidemic, a joint effort was undertaken to corral the zombies into one location in the center of America. The White Lands now function as a dangerous border between the South, West, and Northern territories. X marks the spot where the source will appear. This is a 75-page Bible that she wrote.
Yes.
She's ready.
She is ready. And they're not ready, or they will be ready and we'll see it. But the thing is, in that context, this is where I'm going with it. The social structure will lift Misha Green. This sister in her mid-30s, brilliant. I mean, incredible. And in a second, I'll talk about, even how that brilliance manifests itself in a way that enhances even the conversation we're having now. As I said, by the time you get around Strange Case, Meet Me in Daegu, in other words, the middle part, episodes 5, 6, they're past the book. Now watch this. This is a white dude, Matt Ruff, out of New York City, Lovecraft Country. This is the book that the series is based on. In 2007, Matt Ruff, who's been a novelist his whole life, he's in his late 50s now, mid 50s. He approached several television producers and Hollywood folk, and he pitched 3 possible concepts for writing for television. One was Lovecraft Country, one called 88 Names, and the other was a treatment called Mirage. They were all unsuccessful. Mirage was based on the idea of an alternative reality where the so-called Middle East and the United States were in reverse, and instead of somebody flying planes into the World Trade Center September 11, white fundamentalist Christians bombed Saudi Arabia. and set off. Now, he said it was like, this is 2007, and the Iraq war is going on. This is too close to reality. All it's going to tie together, right? Lovecraft Country was another treatment. They said, nah, we don't want that. So what did he do? Matt Ruff then went and wrote this book, 2016. This book came out in 2016. He hadn't even written the book the series is based on. It started as a pitch to television. Matt Ruff. Then he gets on a call with Jordan Peele and Misha Green, and he says, I really like Misha Green's work. Because remember, Misha Green did Underground. Those of you who don't know Underground, remember Underground only made it 2 seasons. And then, because what happened was the white nationalists took over the network, right? Who used to do the Cubs?
The WN. It was the WN.
WGN. I mean, I did do the Cubs.
Right.
WGN, right? Because Sinclair and all them, right? Because these white nationalists, Fox is not white nationalists enough. That's why this map, as I told y'all, this map. Anyway, the country's dissolving. If you don't think the country's dissolving, that means either you haven't studied history or you just wishing against wish with them aspirational people who I would normally call delusional, but I'm trying to be a little balanced and charitable. But the point is that when Ruff is on the call, Ruff says, oh, I trust her. So they invite him in. He's a consultant. Of course, it's his book. And they, and in many interviews, you can look up Matt Ruff, R-U-F-F, look at his interviews. He says, oh, I didn't bother her. I didn't walk in. I'm looking over her shoulder. I mean, I could have probably said something, but I didn't. I want to see what she does with it. He says she took this thing in places I never even thought about. Now, spoiler alert, I'm going to take 30 seconds to do this. And anybody who doesn't want to, you can mute yourself right now. But for those of you who watch Lovecraft Country like we did, and if you read the book, you already know this. D is a boy in Lovecraft, and George lives. Because Matt Ruff, in other words, it's not. In other words, what Misha Green did, she enhanced the women, although women are already enhanced here. You look at Hippolyta, it's very clear. She changed into a little girl, and of course, the Courtney Vance figure loses his life. Matt Ruff didn't do that. But here's the thing to blow your mind: after you read Lovecraft Country, all 372 pages, you get to the acknowledgments page. All right, y'all hold on to y'all hats. He said this novel had a longer gestation than most. The first seeds of inspiration were planted almost 30 years ago in conversations with Joseph Scantlebury and Professor James Turner at Cornell University. I'll pause there. James Turner is my friend, my Jegna. James Turner is one of the founding fathers of Africana studies in its modern academic formation. James Turner, out of New York, school in Chicago, Northwestern University, came in 1969 to the Howard University tour the Black University Conference in the wake of the Black Power struggle and the struggle to create Black studies. Students from Cornell had taken over the administration building in Cornell. Get a book called Cornell 1969, Cornell 69 that talks about it. James Turner was a young graduate student, brilliant brother, just an incredible intellectual and also a very committed political figure. I mean, James Turner's fingerprints are over just about everything that can be called Africana studies. If you call yourself doing Black studies in America and don't have James Turner at the center of your conversation, you're not doing Black studies. And yes, I said it. And let's sit down and talk. Let's talk. I have thoughts. But at any rate, Turner's still alive. He and his wife, upstate New York. He's New York, has been in Ithaca. Because why those students who came down from Cornell to the conference at Howard said, we like this guy. Went back and said, this is the guy we want. He's the founding director of the Africana Research Center at Cornell University. The other brother, and it doesn't sound like a brother's name, right? But he is a brother. So Matt Ruff took classes with James Turner. But watch this. The other brother he names, Joseph Scantlebury, was a student at Cornell. Look, Matt Ruff said he'd been writing since he was 5 years old. He would write stories in elementary school. He said, that's when I knew I could write a little bit and attract people's attention because the students would listen to my stories and they liked them. So he'd been writing. His mother bought him a typewriter when he was a kid. I mean, you're going to be a novelist. So he's reading science fiction. He's deep in the thing. He said, and I had Black friends. I had friends from all over. But when I went to Cornell, I had, I was friends with people, but I was really a loner. And I would go for these long walks in the countryside. He said, here's the origin of Lovecraft Country. He said, I would go out and walk in the countryside, looking at the hay and the people, this kind of thing. I came back to campus and I stopped by Ujamaa House. That was the black house, because when they took over the building and they got the Africana State Center, they got the black. This happened at Oberlin. Calma Hurton and them, my friend and classmate, and in fact her son is my godson, just got his PhD in physics at LSU, went to Howard undergrad. We all came. I remember when he was a baby, came to Temple. Rebecca Dixon, who teaches at Tennessee State University, another HBCU master teacher. But at any rate, you know, she went to Oberlin and they have this house, black house, right? UMass Amherst. This was the period when they put in together those black dorms. Well, they had one at Cornell. So Ruff says he comes back as an undergrad. He stops by there to talk to his friend who is also an undergrad, Joseph Scantlebury. Joe Scantlebury is like, man, he said, you did that? Yeah, you get some good thinking. Yeah, I like to walk. You know, he said, man, you should do it sometime. He said, that's when the idea for Lovecraft Country was born, because Scantlebury looked at him and said, are you serious? You talking about walking in rural ass New York? He said, Ruff said, yeah. I mean, it's not like the South. He said, do you know what would happen to me? And then he said, in that moment, Ruff was like, I did see a bunch of white people when I saw people, and they did have dogs with them all the time. Damn. It never occurred to me, you can't do what I do. He said that was my awakening. He started taking classes in the Africana Research Center with James Turner. He said the roots of this is Black studies. Now, when y'all watching Lovecraft Country, Misha Green takes something that the white dude conceived out of conversations and classes with one of the geniuses of Black studies and his Black friend, who ends up, I think this brother now is at the Kellogg Foundation high up. In fact, Cornell moved on the Africana Center about 10 years ago. Dr. Turner retired, and then they brought the Africana Center into the College of Arts and Sciences, and Turner was like, no, hell no, you can't do that. If you bring it into arts and sciences, we won't be able to tenure our faculty. It was part of the attack and the war on Black studies. That's what people do. Individuals can't be in institutions. And Joseph Scantlebury ran for an elected alumni position on the Cornell Board of Trustees, in part to try to stop that. So they were still engaged in this intellectual war, still to this day. But I'm sad to say we haven't got to Misha Green. He wrote the book after they rejected it as a TV thing, and he wrote the book based on 30 years, which were sparked by those initial groundings. And then finally, and it's interesting because there was another novelist who was at Cornell at the same time. Their paths overlap, even though they didn't know each other. Remember we talked about him when we were talking about comic books last year. Victor Laval, who married to Emily Bernard, who actually, you know, the Bernard family, James, Emily, Warren, and them, we all went to high school together, Hillsborough. Tim Wise, all them, crazy at little school, produced all them people. But at any rate, Victor Laval is Black. He writes a lot of science fiction. He writes horror stuff. He did the Battle of Black Tom. But they're in conversation, Ruff and Laval. And Laval is like, yeah, I was at Cornell. I came out of New York. I had friends from all over. And I remember I had a Colombian roommate who was kind of light, looked like he was white. I came in the room one day and he had a friend of his who was undergrad, Italian guy. And when I walked in, the Italian guy had taken a piece of paper and shaped it into a cone and put two eyes on it and put over his head and said, I'm here to get you. And he said, my friend was over there stifling a laugh. He said, I walked out, went down the hall to this Black dude who was living by himself, said, can I come hang out with you? Started listening to music. And the next semester I transferred to the Black house. I'm not. So Ruff and Laval are writing about this. So when you see Lovecraft Country, you're looking at something that speaks to the idea that Black people live in a different country than the one you're talking about. And so why is that important? Again, I'll talk about this Overground Railroad and Candace Taylor. This book came out this last year, 2020. It's very interesting. The Green Book and the Roots of Black Travel in America. Now, we know the Green Book, of course, is the book that was put together by a small group, Victor Green, his wife, Alma, his brother, William, was in it for a while. In fact, let me show you a picture of the staff of the Green Book near the end. They published until the mid-60s, but I want to show you all, if I can find it quickly, a picture of the staff, just to give you a sense of who's working on this thing. Oh, man. Yeah, we might have to do a separate one completely on the Green Book because, yeah, I don't think I marked.
We should. I mean, that's a whole reason for it being, and yeah, that's a whole conversation.
Yes, it's a whole conversation because it's 360 pages, and it's got like places. About 5% of the places that the Green Book said to stop are still open, or at least they have signs.
Let's do that.
Yeah, we should because they had ads for like African artifacts in it. They had political stuff. They had, here are the laws in these states, the Jim Crow laws, and here are the places that say that Jim Crow is illegal. It wasn't just places to stop, in other words. In fact, here's one of the African ads. It said, get this African art, get this Nigerian ebony from the Benin forest. In other words, the Green Book wasn't just about Jim Crow and segregation. In fact, it's interesting because, oh man, I wish it had black printers. Oh wait, here we go. Yeah. Here's Victor Green and his wife, Alma. Here's the staff of the Green Book from 1961. It's one dude. It's all women. So understand, I mean, she talks about the fact that, you know, they do features. They did a feature on Bronzeville. Then they talk about the music. In other words, the Green Book isn't just places to stay. It's a curation of Black life. And so when you look at this map, that Misha Green leaked to us and tantalized, kind of tease us with, what you see is the possibility that they were going to take it into a direction that talks about the real nature of this country. There is no we. You understand? There is no we. And that Black section. All right, here we go. We end with this. That Black section might have scared the hell out of them. Why? Look at the cover of this book. Let me move some stuff around here. The cover of this book. This is Edward Onasi's book, Free the Land, the Republic of New Africa and the Pursuit of a Black Nation State. Can y'all see that? See those states there? Those are the 5 states that the Republic of New Africa said in the 1960s Black folks should have. Now, the Republic of New Africa was formed in Detroit by it came out of a group of people called the Malcolm X Society. In fact, I pulled one of the key documents. I knew this brother as well, and of course, this brother is a founding member of the National Coalition of Blacks for Reparations in America, which came into existence in the late 80s. But before that, going back to the 50s and 60s, this brother and his brother, Richard and Milton Henry. This is Richard Henry, who we knew as Brother Amari or Amari Abubakari Obadeli. This is a little pamphlet called War in America, the Malcolm X Doctrine, the political philosophy of the Republic of New Africa. Amari Obadeli, who published this first, in fact, I'll show you his picture, 1968, dedicated to Malcolm and to all Malcolmites. Here's Baba Amari right there. Brother Amari was on the faculty of Prairie View A&M for many years. Another HBCU. Again, the genius of our Black colleges faculties. And this isn't an invitation for somebody sitting at a HWCU to write a wonderful dissertation and explain who Black people are to others. I mean, if you want to, I'm sure some of y'all are thinking about doing one of them social structure dissertations. And if so, go with God. I'll read it. You know, I will. I mean, I'll give you the money and my little money and read it, but I won't pay much attention to it in terms of implications, because like TV shows and everything else, once you've made a compelling case for what these people were trying to do, you then going to write the last chapter where you drive it back into the ditch of, and this is, of course, the best of what America should be. Here we go with this aspirational delusion again. But at any rate, Amari Obadeli's brother was a lawyer, Milton Henry. This is a copy of the Article 3 briefs establishing the legal case for the existence of the Black nation in North America. The United States versus Amari Abubakari Obadeli I, 1973. Briefs written by President Amari Abubakari Obadeli and attorney Gaidi Obadeli, also known as Milton Henry, filed in U.S. District Court for the Southern District of Mississippi on June 25th, June 25th anniversary, 1973. This is important. Why? Because remember, out of the Malcolm X Society, which is founded after Malcolm X is assassinated in 1965, the Henry brothers and all these other folks in Detroit come together. Oh, by the way, and if you want to have a good account, I mean, read Edward Onasi's book, but you can also get Errol's book. Errol says the Provisional Government of the Republic of New Africa emerged from the Black Government Conference in March 1968, which was held at several sites in Detroit, including Reverend Albert Clegg's Central Congregational Church, which would become the Shrine of the Black Madonna. That's important as well, because remember, this is during the same period. Eventually, the RNA getting a shootout with the police. They go to Aretha Franklin's father's church, Bethel. C.L. Franklin gives them a place to meet, and they have the shootout with the police out of Aretha Franklin home church. The bullet hole still in the wall there. In other words, these Black people are trying to come up with a different concept of nation. This is around the time Dr. King is killed. Says the conference was convened by the Malcolm X Society, which was formed shortly after Malcolm's assassination by former members of the Group on Advanced Leadership Goal, which had sponsored Malcolm's famous Message to the Grassroots presentation in Detroit in 1963, his Ballad of the Bullet speech in April 1964, and his last message in February 1965. The reason we have a recording of one of those speeches is because the Henry brothers went to the speech that Malcolm gave, held up recording devices to get it all, and then took it to a brother who pressed it into a record because he had a little side presser label to do that. We all know who that was. Berry Gordy. See, it's who Black people are to other people. Baby love, my baby love. And then it's who we are to each other. Who taught you to hate yourself? You've been hoodwinked, bamboozled, run amok, led astray. I'll print that speech for you. I'll get the records out. No problem. Word, brother. So, when you see that map, Misha Henry, she's playing with fire. Because guess what? She says some of these zombies are fast. Most of them are slow. Sound like January the 6th, 2021 to me. In other words, this is the horde that can't be. We got to try to create a buffer and contain them. And that X marks a spot in what used to be known as Texia, which is what they tried to create a slave republic out there till they ran out there in 1846, the Mexican War. And stopped it and brought Texas in. And by the way, I saw on the front page of today's New York Times, unless I missed it, oh my God, Texas gives citizens authority to enforce its law on abortion. Okay, in case y'all missed that, let me just read the first paragraph. People across the country may soon be able to sue abortion clinics, doctors, and anyone helping a woman get an abortion in Texas under a new state law that contains a legal innovation with broad implications for the American system.
Wait. So somebody going to get an abortion, a regular ass citizen, can intervene and prevent that person from getting an abortion?
I'm saying that Karen Hunter, sitting in Jersey or sitting in Barbados or sitting in Africa, American citizen, can sue an abortion clinic in Texas because a woman tried to get an abortion there. They passed a law. While we talking about voting rights, that's why they in the legislature right now, that shovel mouth Greg Abbott. That map, in other words, isn't fantasy. See, what y'all got to understand is that this was never a country. And in fact, let me just get real straight on this. These are the briefs that they formed. But this is not, look, I loved Amari Obadeli, okay? And I'm not alone. My dear sister, friend, the great Nkechi Taifa, everybody in Cobra, Mashariki Kamal, Jawanza, my man, General Rashid, who's still alive in Florida, who was one of the soldiers who was in the shootout with the police at Aretha Franklin Home Church. We all love Baba Amari. In 1985, Amari Abu Bakari Obadeli went back to school. He got a PhD. Oh, by the way, the Henry brothers are from Philly. So I just mentioned that because, he went back to Philly, wrote a PhD, got a dissertation from the same university I got a dissertation from 13 years later. He's a full-grown elder and went back, and the name of his dissertation in the Department of Political Science, under the name Amari Abu Bakari Obadeli, the provisional president of the Republic of New Africa. Well, I should mention one other cat who was one of their comrades in various formations. That would be my other friend, good elder, the great man who's now ancestor, the great Chokwe Lumumba. And his wife, Nubia, their son is now the mayor of Jackson. Because they went to Jackson. I don't know who Medgar Evers is. You just flew out of Medgar Evers. Okay, no problem. Because he killed Medgar Evers in 1963. He's seen as one thing in the social structure. He's connected to all these people who are connected to each other, like Dick Gregory, but not just Dick Gregory, which is why Medgar Evers was always on a little bit of thin ice with cats like Roy Wilkins and them in the governance structure, because Wilkins is like, y'all can't control Medgar Evers. Medgar Evers is like, damn that, I'm trying to be free. I'm a veteran. I stand up for the flag. J. Robinson says, I can believe that, brother. I don't salute the flag, but I respect your bit. And we all on the same page. We all want the same thing. But this is a blurred thing in the governance structure. You can get along with Malcolm. You can get along with Dick Gregory. You can understand that but for the social structure, we just need this little piece of you where you're talking about voting rights and then you get shot in the back and become a martyr. And in our movement in memory, that's all we want from you. No. We have to recover the momentum of memory in our movement in memory so that we don't read those two the same things. Because out of that same Mississippi, within 5 years after the assassination of Medgar Evers in Jackson, you see the Republic of New Africa leaving Detroit saying we're going to get our 5 states. But why are we making that demand? Because in the legal briefs they filed, the Henry brothers, and then in the dissertation he writes later, Imari was like, y'all passed the 13th Amendment, freeing black people. Oh, by the way, footnote, Candace Taylor tells a story in here. She says she out of Texas, right? She said, I'm with my mama. I'm a little girl. We ride in the car in Texas on the way to Houston. I look out in the field and I see all these men, black men, chopping cotton. I asked my mom, I said, Mom, it was hot. I said, Mom, I thought y'all said slavery was over. She said, it is. And then the little girl said, Kandasi said, well, what are they doing? Her mama said, as they ride by, well, they're prisoners. Shirts off, chained to each other, chopping cotton in the field. She then says, but why are they all black? She said, mother then didn't say nothing, and they rode along in silence. Y'all sit with that. Because not far from Houston, that's where Dr. Oberdelli, who got his PhD and then taught on the faculty of that HBCU Prayer Review for years, was teaching. Anyway, so the point. In 1985, he makes the point, y'all passed that 13th Amendment, which we just heard Candace Taylor tell you where the large exception is, which is why at the end of her book on the Green Book, she said, y'all need to read about the prison industrial complex. That's where she tells that story. She says, because what should we do about the Green Book today? What are the implications today? She said, the stuff is still today and it's worse in some ways. And y'all, we need a Green Book more than ever. So, oh yeah, one of the things they put in the Green Book too is political statements and talking about who our political officials are, who we should have representing us. One of them was Charles Diggs, who was the black congressman from Michigan out of Detroit, came out of the undertaking business. His family were undertakers. Charles Diggs' pictures in the Green Book is too. The Green Book ain't just places to eat and sleep, okay? So at any rate, Abu Bakr Oberdelli, Baba Imari, says, y'all passed the 13th Amendment, say we free. And then you pass the 14th Amendment, say we citizens. But you never asked us what we wanted. He says the legal basis for our claim for reparations and for territory is because we were brought here from our various homes in Africa as a captured people. So unlike the Native Americans, the green part of that map, we're not the home team, but we were brought here as prisoners of a war. This was an ongoing war. Various wars that brought us into this. And so we didn't come here to be citizens in this thing, this criminal enterprise. We should be allowed under your laws to declare our self-determining right to determine how we want to have a relationship with this state formation you call the United States. And when he wrote his dissertation, mind you, it's one black person, and I know her, Emma Lebzansky, out of the history department at Temple. When he wrote his dissertation, he had 4 people on his committee. 3 of them was white, including the chair of his committee. The name of his dissertation was New African State Building in North America, a study of reaction under the stress of conquest. He said the whole narrative of Africans in diaspora is how African people, having been set upon, have reacted to the stress of conquest. In Haiti, they've managed to somehow hack out a country, and you ain't never let them forget it, to the point where right now, while we in this conversation, y'all worried about the price of drawers and blue jeans, which means you got to have a puppet in it that's going to invite you in to make sure that nobody breaks the supply chain, whether it be drawers, blue jeans, or cocaine. That's one way. And in the United States of America, we somehow survived and preserved enough of our ways of knowing, passed on enough of our movement and memory when we controlled our institutions, and made enough culture to make our governance structure stand up despite your best attempts to kill us. And so what Amari and them are saying is, as political theorists, and not only what they are saying, But what when you watch Summer of Soul is in all the songs being sung, in all the music being sung. Because guess what? The same record label that printed and put out Malcolm's speeches, so we have Message to the Grassroots. That same record label was the one that put out a brother who in Summer of Soul, we know, I know you won't leave me. Yeah, that's David Ruffin. But he come out there singing like, so both of us named Eddie Kendricks. David Ruffin come out singing falsetto. He sound like Claude Jeter or somebody. Man, you can't, what range don't y'all have? No shade. I'm an old man. So, you know, old people always think their era was better. But I put it this way, come back in 50 years, we'll see what music's still being played. We ain't gonna be able to settle if anybody now is as good as anybody then. Just come back in 50 years and we'll see in terms of movement and memory whose songs are still being played. But the point is that all of that music, all of that cultural meaning making is part of a governance structure that is having arguments, debates, discussions. And what Amari says is this formation never gave Black people the opportunity to decide how we wanted to be affiliated with it. Maybe we didn't want to be citizens. Y'all ain't from Africa. Yeah, we not from Africa, but we ain't got to go back to Africa. We want Mississippi, Alabama. And that don't mean all the white people got to leave. That just means that we will move there and be in control of the government and everybody else can stay, but we ain't never going to let what happened to us up to now happen again. We'll pass the laws to make sure everybody is good. And if you look at the history of Black people in this country, that's what Ms. Bethune and them talk about. Anytime you wanted everybody included, you probably want to talk to Black people because we didn't say we were going to do what y'all did to us to you. And then during the time of Bethune, you know, the numbers weren't there, but the numbers increasingly get there, which means now you can have Regina King busting people in the face, white supremacists getting blasted out, the Asian girl coming out and vaporizing the Klan and the Cyclops and all this kind of thing in Watchmen, and tied to the trauma of Tulsa, which again shows up in Lovecraft country. However, season 2, wait, you broke up the United States? Yeah. Wait, no, hell no. Hold on. Hold. Is this like when they talked to Ruff when he pitched Lovecraft Country and they said you can't do that Mirage because that's too close to reality? There's a okay.
Wait, hold on. Do you think they knew what? So yeah. I had never. I know you know because you studied this. That New Africa. Let's bring that in again because those southern states.
That's more than the ones.
More, right. So she said, "All right, we're gonna take Texas and show the book again."
Yes. Let me see. Let me see. Oh yeah, here's the Nazis piece. Yes. Okay. Yeah.
So that's Louisiana, Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, and South Carolina. That's all.
Yeah, they said 5 states, but remember this is 1968.
Right. So now she's like, "All right, give me some Texas. We're gonna
no
take
question.
North and West Virginia. And yes.
But here's the challenge. People say, "Well, that ain't gonna happen." It already happened, y'all. Please understand the logic of voter suppression.
Wow.
See, in fact, let me, I pulled a book to actually help us through this because I want to give people some sources they can use to kind of think through this in a more complex way. Oh, I don't know what I did with them. Anyway, y'all, you know how this works. I'm going to keep looking. And anyway, I won't even, because now I was going to get into more of the academic stuff and show you all a couple of pieces.
Okay, I already know. You're going to.
Yeah, I was going to show y'all some academic. Yeah, you already know, right? It might come up, or I might not have brought them over here because they were more academic, and I didn't really want to get too heavy into the academic. Oh, there they go. Hold up. They over there. They over there on one of the other desks.
Sing to yourselves. This is it. He is undefeated, by the way, y'all.
Yeah. I got. Oh yeah, I'm good. Yeah, I'm not. No, I ain't. Yeah, I'm at home, but I ain't home like that, right? So this is Donald Kettle's book. Donald Kettle's an interesting guy. He is actually at the University of Texas, Austin. He wrote a book last year called The Divided States of America, Why Federalism Doesn't Work. And if you read this book in tandem with this one that just came out this year, this is Adam Gentelson's book. Y'all probably heard this one, Kill Switch, The Rise of the Modern Senate and the Crippling of American Democracy. He worked on Harry Reid's staff. He's talking about the filibuster in here. He know all the rules of the filibuster and what's happening. Here's the problem we have in the United States of America. Oh, by the way, Baba Amari defended his dissertation in May 1985, New African State Building in North America, a study of reaction under the stress of conquest. That book The book that he published out of that is a famous book by Mario Bedelli called America, the Nation State, where he helps us understand. In fact, let me just help y'all understand. Chapter 2 of his dissertation, defining the state. What is a state? That's different than a nation. We talked about that many times. Then he goes to the Greeks, Aristotle, Plato, Weber, Max Weber. He talks about the Roman state and the question of citizenship. And then he spends about 20 pages talking about Egypt and Kush and concepts of the state that are outside of Europe and in fact coming into Africa. Then he devotes a chapter, Europe invades Africa. This is a piece that he wrote. A scholar who has already battled the government, been locked up. The battles in Mississippi is a whole nother thing. We have to do a whole thing on the RNA. Coming out of Detroit, he's writing this. He's not writing this at an HBCU with 4 black faculty. These are white cats, including the chair of the Department of Political Science at Temple. So you're not talking about people who are going to be predisposed to make. In other words, you got to the next chapter, African states before 19th century conquest. He then spends a chapter on the German British conquest of West Africa, then goes into old world states under the stress of conquest. He talks about Guinea. He talks about India. And in other words, he's going to give you the whole globe. Then European state building in the New World south of the United States. And he talks about how the Europeans installed state structures. When you look at Haiti, you're looking at Africans literally fighting their way out of enslavement and then attempting to build a state model where there wasn't a state model before because it was basically a profit venture for the French and finance capital coming out of France. They were trying to build a state. So if you remember Toussaint, who dies in captivity, then Dessalines comes along and he's assassinated. So this ain't the first time you've seen this kind of intrigue. Then you got Henri Christophe. He's like, I'm going to be an emperor. Why? Well, man, that guy is a fascist. No, they don't have a form of government. They're trying to come up with a form of government. At the same time, they're being attacked from everybody. So then the next chapter, chapter 8 of Mario Bedelli goes into Haiti. He talks about Haiti. He talks about Palmares in Brazil. He talks about Jamaica. And he says, how are these Africans responding to the trauma of this disruption and trying to build states south of the United States? And then part 2 of the dissertation, he writes the next chapter, chapter 9, New Africans in the North, meaning the United States and Canada, react to the stress of conquest during slavery. He talks about the Maroons. He talks about the Seminoles. He talks about Richard Allen, Frederick Douglass, Martin Delany. He's talking about the Black church. Then he starts about state building and counting. When we start, anyway, I wanted to go through that a little bit to let you know, when we start talking about these conceptual categories, all of this reading, all of this interaction with these elders, all conversations I've either been a part of, listening to, talking to, thinking through, it all finds its way into those 6 categories. This ain't just, let's throw these sticks against the wall and see what happens. No, because you got to have a framework that is simple enough to ask the question and then broad enough for you to answer it. So when the social structure of the United States, when he says federalism doesn't work, what he's saying is federalism. In fact, I'll give you the jacket so you'll know. Federalism was James Madison's great invention, an innovative system of power sharing that balanced national and state interests. Federalism was the pragmatic compromise that brought the colonies together to form the United States. Yet, even beyond the question of slavery, inequality was built into the system because federalism, by its very nature, meant that many aspects of an American's life depended on where they lived. Pause. You got a federal system where everybody gets 2 senators and population determines how many representatives you get. If you want to know how voter suppression plays into this, ask yourself a question. If you got a Senate capped at 100 and everybody get 2, you can never let DC get 2. You can never let Puerto Rico and Guam be states and get 2 and 2 apiece. And you got to suppress the amount of people who are not white nationalists who can vote in those states. Misha Green is put out because since Amari and them asked for that, we done littered up states all over, and all these Spanish people having babies. So if the Republic of New Africa was drawing that map in 2021, believe me, it'd be more than 5 states. And again, they didn't say black only. They just said, we got to have a cane break, a fire break against you white nationalists. Now, how is white nationalism going to continue, and how's this thing going to fracture? Adam Gentleson walks through it. Right now, because of y'all busted y'all ass, Cliff and Latosha and them, and we just mentioned Cliff and Latosha because they are our friends, and we know they bust their tail. Everybody out there, I mean everybody, the political folk who are closer to my thinking and others who would say, you know what, this voting thing is a setup, but we're going to vote anyway. The people who said this voting thing is a setup and I ain't going to vote, but you know what, I am going to knock on these doors. So who got those 2 senators elected in Georgia, even they set aside all the political difference. Now the press says it's 50-50. It's not 50-50. It's not 50-50. Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema are not with them. Would y'all please read what Kettle said? Read what Jennison said. Jennison told y'all the filibuster is imaginary. It's not in the Constitution. It's not. In fact, you know what Jennison reminds us? Something we talked about months ago. John C. Calhoun, the white nationalist supporting slavery, who joined with the South Carolinians when they seceded from the Union. The filibuster is white nationalism's way, once they lose the population fight, to hold on till the wheels fall off. And this man that told y'all Kettle is based on where you live. So voter suppression, we are at the inflection point in this country. In other words, we can't win any more elections if everybody registers and if everybody votes. So we got to shave off 5% in Georgia, 5% in Texas, because this next cycle, 2022 and 2024, we won't win if they really go out there. If they really go out there. So I'm saying all that to say that when, finally, when we see Misha Green put a map up like that, that cuts a little too close to the reality that already exists. And in Texas, where they've been stealing elections recently and they can't win another one based on demographics, if you politically organize, I don't mean everybody who look alike gonna vote alike. A lot of this is just getting you in the room to have the argument and get people organized. But as we saw on the front page of today's New York Times, you could be sitting your ass in the center of black as hell Chicago, pick up the phone, call Texas and say, I'm suing the abortion clinic. And Texas then told you, come on. Why? Because we are fighting this war right here that Misha Green and put color codes on. And she even put the X where we have in the ground zero of the fight. This might have been a little too close, Professor.
Wow.
It may have been a little too close.
Do you think it's going to get done? You think it's going to get made? You think Apple has the fortitude?
Well, see, here's the thing, right? Here's the thing. It's not about courage. I think, like I said, there's a lot of moving parts. So Apple's looking like, oh, y'all lost y'all mind. Disney looking like, oh, yeah, okay, if you didn't sign the deal, I was going to sign the deal. Why? Because the thing we have to always remember is it's mythology. There is no we. So you got people like you, me, and millions of others who want to see it. So they counting their dollars like, we might have to make this movie. Right. We might have to make this series.
You're saying that Wakanda.
Oh, I didn't even talk about that. I should say a word about that. Let me think about this. How should I say this?
What did Wakanda change?
What is that?
What did Wakanda change?
Well, I mean, they got a couple of $1 billion of money, especially you Negroes went out and saw it 5 times. So in that case, it didn't change nothing. We got caught up in a conversation about our sister Felicia Rashad and Bill Cosby. But what I saw the day of the announcement that she was made the Dean of Fine Arts, the chair of Disney, Robert Iler, said he's going to be happy to help raise money for a new School of Fine Arts at Howard. Okay, dude, you're the CEO of Disney, which means maybe you could have wrote, okay, I think it's going to cost $30 billion. Here's the first 10. You didn't say that. So I'm not sure what we got yet, except a few more people got some jobs and black people are plastered over everything. But the profit went into the pockets of the people who continue to get richer. And so I think the idea, the human imagination, now we're going to talk about ways of knowing just for a second. The human imagination is shaped in the now. This is all the only moment we have right now. But in the now, we look at the conditions we're in and we make choices about the world we want to live in, even as we're thinking about it, and we move. Historical fantasy, whether it be Lovecraft Country, whether it be Abraham Lincoln Vampire Slayer or Harriet Tubman Demon Slayer, or watch this, Lovecraft ain't the first time we've done this in our culture meaning making. Go back and get Sutton Griggs' book, Imperium and Imperio. Before that, go get Martin Delaney's Blake. Come forward and look at the science fiction. In fact, get my man. Oh, wait, because I started to pull all those books, but I said, no, I'm not going to do that. I thought I had him over here. George Schuyler. If y'all haven't heard the name George Schuyler, he did a book called Black Empire. He serialized that in the, he serialized Black Empire in the Black newspaper, in the Black press.
That's okay. That's all right.
It is Black Empire. I want y'all to see Black Empire because it's one of those books that Black people did. In other words, we've been talking about having our own country for a long time. I'm wondering what I did with it. Anyway, yeah, you definitely know how it is. I may come back to it. But at any rate, we've been doing this before Lovecraft Country, before Watchmen. But see, Lovecraft Country in this sense, yeah, I think it could get made, or they might make a graphic novel of it or something like that. But in terms of Wakanda, as I said, when we think about ourselves in the now, historical fiction is not as safe as Afrofuturism. In other words, remember HBO was going to do that thing, Confederate. What if the Confederates won?
Yeah, what if the South had won?
Right.
And we got busy.
Too close. It's too close because the South did win. See, this is the problem. The South won the we in terms of whiteness, because putting some hillbillies or some CEOs or some police officers in jail for January the 6th and refusing to even look the way of your quote unquote colleagues who were over there coordinating the attack tells you that they already won. The white nationalists won. You can't prosecute them. Okay. And anybody saying that they didn't win and we're better than that, you should sew your lips shut, because what you're doing, you're engaging now, you're making people crazy because people can see we're living in the now. Josh Hawley not going to jail. Donald Trump not going to jail. Y'all ain't slow walking it. And I know, Joe, you kind of want to do it maybe. And I know, Merrick, you kind of want to do it. But guess who really want to do it? Kristen Clark and Vanita Gupta. And guess what? They can't do it because you the one making the call. And I know y'all had a meeting at the White House last week and you blew a little bit more smoke up people booty and it's very nice. And you're okay. And we're going to fight. No, you ain't, because your boy blow dry Joe Manchin ain't going to do nothing. And Kristen Sinema is shook now. Why? Because the Arizona white nationalists have run roughshod. Now she a little scared. Why? She's scared because she ain't going to get reelected. And so now she might loosen up a little bit. And so William Barber and them, Liz Theo Harris and them, everybody involved, I say, yes, put on political pressure, but understand there's something more important to them than the United States of America. Something more important to them than the United States of America. Something more important to them. And that is their sovereign right to be white and to be in charge.
You're right to say white.
Right. They sound right to be white. The sovereign white to be white. Right. And in terms of a conflict with capitalism, there's no real conflict because the corporate interests are looking to continue to maximize their profit. And so, woke capitalism, as they're calling it, there's a whole shelf of books on that. And certainly in the last year, we've seen it. This is an attempt to make sure they continue to make profits. So when you see Wakanda, in that context, understand that that's not historical fantasy. So that's not HBO saying, I don't know if we're going to do Confederate. That's not, remember Aaron Magruder did this graphic novel a few years ago, Birth of a Nation. Same guy did the Boondocks. What if Black people had their own country in the United States? I mean, it's very interesting. I mean, and see, that's different though. Because in fact, they made a film where the Confederates won. Spike Lee was involved. Is it called Confederacy? Y'all can look it up. Somebody look it up. I've seen it. Abraham Lincoln dies in exile, I think in Canada. They catch Harriet Tubman. So, by the way, y'all go to narrative and look at our conversation on John Brown, because in our conversation on John Brown, okay, now I really do have to, there you go.
I knew it was going to bother you.
No question. You knew it was going to bother me, right? So if it's white, you can have that because it's a morality play. You're worried about the future. So you can have historical fiction based on what if and put it into the future and grapple with it because it gives you a chance, perhaps to the last ditch effort to stitch this thing together. That's Margaret Atwood, who wrote The Handmaid's Tale years ago. And then The Testaments. I resisted the urge to go pull them both, the novels. Canadian, right? I mean, Margaret Atwood is writing about what happens in a place where the theocracy triumphs, right? And then they make that into, and what's this the lady name? She killing it. Was on the West Wing.
Who?
Elizabeth.
Elizabeth Moss.
Moss. Right.
She was in Mad Men.
Yeah, Mad Men, but I see Zoe Bartlett.
She played the daughter.
Yeah, Zoe Bartlett. I see Zoe Bartlett, right? But here's one that has never been made into a TV series or a movie. This is by the very prominent science fiction writer Terry Bisson. What if John Brown had won and Harriet Tubman had won? And we talked about this on Narrative. Fire on the Mountain.
Right.
A novel by the author of Talking Man. This is Terry Bisson, another white man. He's saying, what if John, and this is like science fiction too. It opens with the protagonist. She's coming back from Africa to get her daughter because her grandfather was the one who was at Harper's Ferry, and she's taking his papers to Harper's Ferry, and there's a new African nation in the South. And they got the tricked out science fiction. Africa has got all the high technology. There's trade going on, and the United States is broken up. I'm saying, if between Lovecraft Country and Fire on the Mountain, if I had to pick one, I'm picking Fire on the Mountain. Y'all go get this and see what y'all think. And then finally, again, this is Black Empire. There it is, 1936. This is a later edition. I ain't pulled 36. George Schuyler. African people in the United States go back to Africa and help the Africans liberate Africa from colonialism, called Black Empire. Now, he was an arch conservative later in life.
Didn't he write Black No More?
Yeah, Black No More. Same guy. Guy. Black Empire. Right.
We're gonna have that in Narrative too.
Yeah, we definitely gonna have Black No More.
I already transcribed that.
Oh, excellent. Oh, yes. So see, if it's Handmaid's Tale, white on white, we can have a conversation. Here's another one. Philip Dick. Did y'all see the Amazon series, The Man in the High Castle? This is Philip Dick. Y'all know Philip Dick. Philip Dick was getting in people's minds crazy. Remember, Philip Dick wrote a short story that they made into a movie with Tom Cruise called Minority Report. What happens if you can read somebody's mind and make them and arrest them before they commit the crime, right? And at the end of it, a Minority Report, the police, Tom Cruise is like, no, we can't do that. They didn't commit the crime yet. So you can't do that. So in other words, it's a morality play on whiteness. But in this one, the Nazis win and the Japanese win. And so the Japanese take the West Coast and the Nazis take the East Coast, and the middle part of the United States is this zone where you got Black people, Jews, Colorado. They trying to figure out how can we hide this kind of thing. They wiped out almost all the Africans on the continent, the Nazis, white supremacists, and they now in rockets. They done gone to Mars. Again, Philip Dick is writing all that, but it's in the hands of white people. Then this young sister comes along, brilliant, remixes a brilliant novel by a white dude who was turned that way by Black people in the Black States program, one of the oldest in the country. Yeah, nah, we good. Man, y'all got Men in the High Castle. You got The Handmaid. Yeah, but that's us. We can't have you Negroes walking around free. Although in Man in the High Castle, the third and final season, and it's not in the book, it's not in Dick's novel, you got Black people in the United States who engage in an insurgency because they're going to create some space to operate. If y'all haven't seen Men in the High Castle,
I stopped watching it because it was too damn disturbing.
Say some, since I know we're going to close in a second, but say something about that, because that, I felt the same way. But what you said that.
No, I mean, this has been a haunting fear, and I'm going to say it out loud of mine, that, there would be a time when we'd be rounded up again like that, and since a little girl. So watching that was triggering, but I also could see it. And this was before, as Trump became president, I was like, the climate in this country, and then 74 million of y'all showed up again in bigger numbers, and you're right, nobody's going to jail.
Nobody.
And so the climate is still what the climate is. And if we're not vigilant and paying attention and doing the things that we need to do, history always, what do you say? What's that you say? History doesn't repeat. No, you say history doesn't repeat. It does what? It
rhymes. History doesn't repeat itself, but it does rhymes. Or as Jelani Cobb says, and in fact, my friend Jelani Cobb, who I guess the report was out that they tried to get Jelani to come to leave Columbia and come to Howard. I'm like, Jelani went to HBCU and he worked for years at Spelman. Jelani know what it is. So I don't know, Jelani. Hey, Jelani, if you see this, bro, come on down, man. Look, Ta-Nehisi coming, Nicole coming. I'm saying if more of y'all come, then we might actually be able to, to get enough attention on these HBCUs to get those faculties freed up to do what we need to do, because it's a different kind of world. So I don't know. But anyway, the sister who I don't know, Candace Taylor. Again, Overground Railroad, very important book on the Green Book. But what she quotes Ta-Nehisi, she quotes Jelani, and Jelani says, history doesn't repeat itself. Human beings repeat themselves. And so it's interesting. I said, okay, that's an interesting concept, because if this country wanted to be different, you know what it would take? Be different. This is what Miss Bethune is saying. Should be different. Just be different. Don't blame this on Thomas Jefferson, Alexander Hamilton. Don't paint yourself up and go put these words in Hamilton in their mouth. No, be different. Just be different. Yeah, just be different. And yeah, so no, I meant to say Afrofuturism. I think historical fiction can be uncomfortable because, like you said, a tick to the left, a tick to the right, Man on the High Castle, that's America. They just changed it out for the swastika. They got the same whiteness, the same thing. They ain't even had to change. In fact, that's why all them white Americans in Man in the High Castle and in the novel went to the Nazis. Oh shit, we was waiting for y'all. In fact, I ain't got to hide it no more. This is what I'm saying. Let's exterminate these Jews. Let's exterminate these black people. I mean, Dick has got it right on it. But here's the difference. Fantasy, including Afrofuturism, creates a safe space for desire that doesn't cost anything. So, in other words, Wakanda is great. Why? It ain't like I gotta make it real. I've even seen some stuff on social media and I said, "Oh wow, Howard is gonna be Wakanda." Shit, I hope not. Wakanda's not real, y'all. And you understand why there was a Wakanda in the comic books? If you read the comic books, you know why. It's a Wakanda because they got a medal that if anybody come there messing with them, they cut their whole head off and send it back to where they came from, saying, "You're gonna send somebody else, we'll cut everybody's head off." When you ready to do that, I'm ready for that. That's what Amari and them talking about. Because once you have it, you've got to be able to defend it. That's why the Jackson Police and the Mississippi Bill came after the Republic of New Africa, and they called back to Detroit for help. And you know who tells that story? Who's telling it before she became an ancestor? Who Jeannie Theo Harris, Liz Theo Harris' sister, wrote about in The Rebellious Life of Rosa Parks. They called, the Republic of New Africa called Detroit looking for John Conyers and them to help them because the damn police didn't come for them. Who picks up the phone in Conyers' office? A woman Conyers gave a job because she and her husband Raymond had to get the hell out of Alabama after what they did, and they had family in Detroit. It was Rosa Parks that sent in those youngsters to help the Republic of New Africa, one of them being Chokwe Lumumba. This is Rosa Parks. See, this ain't Montgomery on a bus social structure. This is Rosa Parks was when the police shot up the blind pig. There's a book called The Algiers Motel Incident. In fact, they made a movie of it. What's that movie? Where Bilal and Black Thought did the soundtrack. Detroit. It ain't fair. Right? Remember that, right? And John Boyega was in it. That's the story of what happened at the blind pig. But of course, that's Hollywood. Holly look at something like that and say, see, this is Hollywood. Why? You made it about the white girls. You made it about the police. You made it about the black man who's a cop's got a moral dilemma. And then you stopped it at the end with a couple of little thing at the credits. What they didn't show y'all was that those cops got off. No surprise. But in the governance structure, those police were tried in absentia by the people's jury. And guess who was one of the members of the people's jury? Rosa Parks. See, why don't y'all make a movie about that? And they declared them guilty in Detroit. You know what I'm saying? So,
maybe one day in a space that we're creating, those movies will get made. Those pieces will get told.
I think so.
Yes, I think so.
I think so. The narrative.
Yes.
Yes, we are. Learn, create, grow. So that's the create part.
Yes.
Yes.
We are in the process. This is as I said to somebody in the chat. This I'm looking at it. However long it takes to build a pyramid. I just had an interesting conversation with our brother Brad, the architect at Howard, about how the pyramid of Giza was built, and we are building it in the same exact way. It's going to take all hands on deck, and it's a labor of love, as the pyramid wasn't built by slaves.
Nope.
People who cared about the governance structure.
That's right. That's right.
On
so
that,
y'all now join narrative, y'all. And if you don't, to spread the word, y'all see what we doing. It's we. It's we. This is we. When we say we mean we. Love you.
Love you too. Have a wonderful day. Thank you, everyone, from wherever you are from, and new people, welcome. As Dr. Carr said, spread the word. We'll see you next month.
Yes.
we may see you before then, because when this social media platform pops off, we're gonna come back here and do that.
There's a social media platform.
Yeah, because we need a safe space to have conversations unfettered, unmolested, without other people's opinions about what we're saying, and trolls, all the trolls, no, a troll-free zone. Don't you want a place where we could just have a conversation without somebody coming in, putting up clown symbols and doing dumb stuff?
Ooh, sound like a governance structure to me. You covering all the bases. All the bases are covered.
Wait, hold on. Before we leave, let's just Misha Green did this thing. Not me. We got to create the world we want to live in. I'm not sure if I want to live in this exact world, but we at least need to have the ability and the power to do that.
That's exactly right.
Can't do it as long as we're constantly facing and looking for acceptance and pouring our glass through a filter, our glass of water through somebody else's filter that's filled with filth.
That's right.
We have to do right. Yeah, we have to do that. So we want to live in a world, we got to create it, right?
That's right. We gotta create it, and once we create it, we will maintain it in the best of our, and defend it. Because Nina done asked you, Center Man, where you gonna run to? You run to the rock, right? That go hide you. That's word to Claude Jeter. Love you.
All right, y'all. Bye.
See y'all.